Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
You ought to plead to Elder Xiaoling. Duanling Tian glanced at the robust young man with a calm gaze, then said indifferently. He originally only intended to intimidate this new disciple, but now that Zhao Lin had interfered with the matter, it caused him to be unable to help rage to arise in his heart. Elder Zhao Lin, I beg you, please don't let this senior brother let me go. The robust young man hurriedly looked at Duanling Tian when he heard this, and was slightly hysterical, as if he was grasping onto the last life-saving straw. Zhao Lin's gaze went slightly cold when he heard the robust young man, and looked at Duanling Tian, then suddenly shouted out explosively, Duanling Tian, killing a fellow disciple mercilessly. According to the rules of the 7-star sword sect, you ought to be killed. Killing a fellow disciple? Duanling Tian couldn't help but be stunned when Zhao Lin said this. The other people, including Lu Qiu, were stunned as well. When did Duanling Tian kill a fellow disciple? What did he mean by this? In next to no time, something flashed by the eyes of everyone present, and they completely understood what Zhao Lin meant by this. Whoosh! A terrifying aura was emitted from Zhao Lin's body, and his entire figure seemed to transform into a gust of wind that directly flashed towards Duanling Tian. Vast origin energy raged and flashed. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The origin energy transformed into palm prints that covered the sky, then whistled as they descended toward Duanling Tian, enveloped Duanling Tian within the palm prints. At the same time, 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form above Zhao Lin. Obviously, he was exerting his full strength, desiring to directly blast Duanling Tian to death. They could imagine how if Duanling Tian was blasted to death by Zhao Lin, then the new disciple that was held midair outside the chain bridge by Duanling Tian would surely die. No. The new disciple that was hung midair by Duanling Tian saw Zhao Lin attacking Duanling Tian, and his face was devoid of blood as he exclaimed in grief. He closed his eyes in despair. Presently, anyone with discerning eyes could easily see that Zhao Lin wanted to directly kill Duanling Tian. Then, the responsibility for the death of the new disciple that was hung midair outside the bridge by Duanling Tian would be all pushed by him onto Duanling Tian. In this way, he would be removing evil for the sect. Duanling Tian's face went ghastly pale, as he never imagined that Zhao Lin would be so unscrupulous. At this moment, traces of coldness suddenly arose within his heart. Perhaps, since the start, when he threw the new disciple out of the chain bridge, Zhao Lin already had this intention in his heart. This Zhao Lin wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of him. As for Zhao Lin's objective, Duanling Tian was extremely clear of it. It was none other than for the sake of the fictitious Muscle Meridian Rebirth scroll that he made up. These thoughts were all thoughts that Duanling Tian completely in an instant. As soon as he finished his thoughts, he saw Zhao Lin had arrived before him, and the palm prints that covered the sky and contained the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths enveloped down upon him, causing him to be practically unable to breathe. At his moment, he was not only unable to dodge in time, but he even didn't have the time to pull the robust young man back onto the chain bridge. Zhao Lin's speed was too swift. The palm print condensed by origin energy and covered the sky whistled as they descended, and continuous sounds of air exploding resounded out in the sky. Zhao Lin's face revealed insanity. He'd waited for so long, and he'd finally found a chance. At the instant that he attacked, he'd already condensed his origin energy into sound, and transmitted it into the ears of Lu Qiu, who stood nearby Duanling Tian. Elder Lu Qiu, so long as you don't make a move today, then I, Zhao Lin, will owe you a great favor. He believed that with the relationship between him and Lu Qiu, coupled with his promise, Lu Qiu ought to not interfere. So long as Lu Qiu didn't interfere, then Duanling Tian would die without a doubt. Elder Lu Qiu, Duanling Tian realized that danger was upon him. His face went deathly pale, and he thought of Lu Qiu at the first possible moment. Now, only Lu Qiu was able to stop Zhao Lin. The corners of Zhao Lin's mouth had a wisp of disdain when he heard Duanling Tian calling out to Lu Qiu. This Duanling Tian thought Lu Qiu would help him? naive. But, in next to no time, the disdain on the corners of Zhao Lin's mouth completely froze. Whoosh! An afterimage flashed before his eyes, and he saw Lu Qiu appearing before Duanling Tian in the blink of an eye. This scene caused this expression to be unsightly. Whoosh! Lu Qiu raised his hand and flicked his sleeve, and vast origin energy that contained an even more terrifying aura swept out. Above Lu Qiu, thousands of ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared. Bang! His sleeve swept out, and in the blink of an eye, he'd utterly destroyed the palm prints Zhao Lin slapped out that covered the entire sky to disappear in the sky. Duanling Tian, you've already taught him a lesson. Just leave this matter at that. Lu Qiu stared vigilantly at Zhao Lin, who had an unsightly expression as he spoke to Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian took a deep breath. At that moment earlier, he felt death to be that close, only just a little bit. Just that little bit, and he would have been killed by Zhao Lin. Although he tried to call out to Lu Qiu, but he was extremely perturbed in his heart. Because he knew that Zhao Lin and Lu Qiu had a good relationship and was unsure of whether Lu Qiu would help him. If Lu Qiu didn't help him, he would surely die without a doubt. Duanling Tian withdrew his hand when he heard Lu Qiu and pulled the robust young man back onto the chain bridge. They casually threw him onto the chain bridge. Along with the robust young man descended onto the chain bridge started to sway lightly. The robust young man collapsed limply on the chain bridge and wasn't able to get up even after a long time. Earlier, he had nearly died. He slowly raised his head with an enraged gaze, but he wasn't looking at Duanling Tian, but instead at Zhao Lin. What are you looking at? Zhao Lin noticed this new disciple daring to look at him with such a gaze. He was already incomparably irritated in his heart, and now his face sank as he shouted coldly. The robust young man lowered his head in the end when he saw this. Only now did he recall that this Zhao Lin was an outer court elder of Migres Peak. If he really offended Zhao Lin, then once Zhao Lin wanted to kill him, Zhao Lin would only need to find a place that was devoid of people to do it. Lu Qiu. Zhao Lin looked at Lu Qiu with a gaze that slowly went gloomy, and his voice was incomparably cold and indifferent. Zhao Lin, he's someone the Peak Master wants to see. Lu Qiu looked back at Zhao Lin without a shred of fear. Very good. You very good. Zhao Lin deeply glanced at Lu Qiu, then turned around to look at the 20 new disciples before coldly saying, "Let's go." Seeing Zhao Lin bringing the others along to leave, Duanling Tian gazed at Zhao Lin's figure and his eyes were filled with dense killing intent. In this lifetime, the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Duan clan's Duanling Xing was undoubtedly the first person that caused Duanling Tian to truly have infinite killing intent towards and wished for nothing more than to burn his bones and scatter his ashes. Now, a similar killing intent had arose in his heart towards Zhao Lin. That feeling of his life hanging by the thread was something he wasn't willing to try another time in this lifetime. Duanling Tian's chest was filled with flames of rage that seemed ready to flow out at any moment. Duanling Tian, have you offended Zhao Lin somehow? Lu Qiu looked at Duanling Tian and asked uncertainly. Earlier, determination to kill Duanling Tian had obviously arose within Zhao Lin's heart and even made a promise to him. If it wasn't for the Peak Master wanting to see Duanling Tian, and he had just recently obtained generous rewards from the Peak Master because of Duanling Tian, perhaps he would really agree to Zhao Lin's promise and not interfere in the matter. Even though Zhao Lin was only a first-level origin core stage martial artist, but Zhao Lin's background was something that he had to fear. He was clear in his heart that based on Zhao Lin's attitude earlier, Zhao Lin had obviously completely felt hatred towards him. Not only had the relations between the two of them completely destroyed, but Zhao Ling might even go against him at every possible chance in the future. I hope my choice is correct. Lu Qiu looked at the young man who had boundless potential before him and silently said in his heart, I don't know as well. Perhaps I've inadvertently offended him. Duanling Tian shook his head. He didn't plan to speak of the matter between him and Zhao Lin. If he denied the existence of the Muscle Meridian Rebirth Scroll, then wouldn't he be admitting to have consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk? The 10,000-year stalactite milk was sufficient to make anyone be moved by it, including Lu Qiu. Lu Qiu nodded. Let's go. He naturally didn't believe what Duan Ling Tian said, but he was able to discern that Duan Ling Tian had something difficult to mention, so he didn't continue to question Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian and Lu Qiu walked shoulder to shoulder, continuing to head towards Dubhe Peak. On the way, Duan Ling Tian had a sincere expression when he spoke to Lu Qiu. Elder Lu Qiu, I, Duan Ling Tian, will remember the debt that you saved my life today in my heart. The day will come when I return this favor to you. Although it was impossible for him to tell Lu Qiu of the reason he was in conflict with Zhao Lin, but Lu Qiu had saved his life today, and he engraved this kindness into his heart. Lu Qiu lightly smiled and didn't refuse it, because he knew how valuable Duan Ling Tian's promise was. Perhaps, with Duan Ling Tian's current strength, Duan Ling Tian was unable to help him. However, in the future, Duan Ling Tian would be an existence that even he would need to look up to. Duan Ling Tian was able to have a cultivation at the 8th level of the origin core stage at such an age, so soaring up into the sky in the future was nothing difficult. Of course, the precondition would be that Duan Ling Tian was able to safely mature. Otherwise, once he came to a premature death, then even if he had any high natural talent, it would still be in vain. After the two of them arrived at Dubhe Peak, under the lead of Lu Qiu, Duan Ling Tian walked all the way up Dubhe Peak, and when they neared the peak of the mountain, he saw a spacious platform. Needless to say, the cultivation environment here was extremely good, and the origin energy within Duan Ling Tian's body was slightly pulsing. Elder Lu Qiu, could it be that this is the Dubhe Peak spirit point? Duan Ling Tian looked at Lu Qiu and asked curiously, "You even know of the spirit point?" Lu Qiu was slightly surprised. "I heard the Alcade Peaks Elder Bai mention it." Duan Ling Tian nodded. He still remembered the words that Elder Bai said to him that day. The best place of cultivation within the 7-star sword sect was at the spirit point on Dubhe Week, and it had ample spirit energy. The advancement of cultivation of people that cultivated here was tremendously swift. Exactly, from here and above is the location of the spirit points of Dubhe Peak. Lu Qiu nodded, then lightly smiled. The Dubhe Peak's location of spirit points are divided into the 9 great spirit points. Each of our 7-star sword sects, 6 great outer court sword peaks peak masters occupy one of the spirit points. The other 3 spirit points are respectively occupied by the sect leader and the 2 guardian elders. When he spoke of the 7-star sword sect leader, Lu Qiu's expression was still comparatively calm. But when he spoke of the 2 guardian elders, traces of admiration arose on Lu Qiu's face. Guardian elder. Duan Ling Tian deeply remembered it in his heart. Figures that are able to make Lu Qiu forget himself would surely not be simple. 9 great spirit points. This place ought to have a spirit point, right? As Duan Ling Tian spoke, his gaze descended onto the vast platform. On the platform was a palace that stood erect from the ground, with a vast, imposing manner. This palace is Merak Hall, the place of cultivation of the Merak Peak's peak master. Lu Qiu nodded and slowly said, "Merak Hall? Merak Peak's master?" A vague smile appeared on the corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth. He still remembered that during the outer court martial competition a few days ago, the 7th level origin core stage outer court disciple, Hu Shuefeng, that desired to kill him was the personal disciple of the Merak Peak's master. Among the 9 great spirit points, the lowest spirit point is occupied by the Merak Hall. Going up from here is the location of the Mizar Hall that occupies another spirit point. Lu Qiu brought Duan Ling Tian along to continue towards the peak of Dubhe Peak. On the way, Duan Ling Tian saw many 7-star sword sect disciples. Without exception, the color of the 7 stars that surrounded the sword-shaped symbol on the attire of these 7-star sword sect disciple was silver. Obviously, these 7-star sword sect disciples were all inner court disciples. Elder Lu Qiu. Some of the inner court disciples that knew Lu Qiu lightly smiled as they saluted Lu Qiu. As for Duan Ling Tian, they only casually glanced at him, not even looking him in the eye. Although Duan Ling Tian was currently well known throughout the 7-star sword sect's outer court and had slight reputation in the inner court, but in the inner court, there weren't many people who knew him. Duan Ling Tian quickly followed behind Lu Qiu to continue walking up. On the way, he could see many independent gorges. These places are the places of cultivation of the inner court disciples, even though it isn't on the spirit point, but it's still situated within the spirit point area that's formed by the 9 great spirit points, and the cultivation environment is pretty good. Lucio introduced to Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian nodded. Even though the cultivation environment here was far inferior to the stalactite cave, compared to the other places within the 6 great outer court sword peaks, it was undoubtedly much better. This is Mizar Hall. Before long, Lucio's voice sounded out. Duan Ling Tian glanced over. A vast platform appeared once again up ahead, and a palace with a vast, imposing manor stood erect on the platform. Mizar Hall. Duan Ling Tian was clear in his heart that this Mizar Hall ought to be the place of cultivation of the Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Fan, who presided over the outer court martial competition a few days ago. Right when Duan Ling Tian and Lucio were intending to continue walking up the peak, a figure that was like the wind flashed out of a pavilion atop the Mizar Hall and arrived before Duan Ling Tian and Lucio in next to no time. Junior brother Duan Ling Tian, wait. This was a young man around the age of 26 or 27, with sword-shaped eyebrows and starry eyes, an impressive appearance. What caused Duan Ling Tian to be surprised was that this young man was actually slightly similar to the Mizar Peak's peak master, Zheng Fan, between the brows. Thinking about this person seemed to have come out of Mizar Hall, Duan Ling Tian thought in his heart. Could it be that he had some relationship with Zheng Fan? Elder Lucio. After the young man lightly smiled to Duan Ling Tian, he looked at Lucio, who was beside Duan Ling Tian, and bowed in salute. Lucio returned a smile. The young man looked at Lucio and slowly said, Elder Lucio, my father wants to say a few words to junior brother Duan Ling Tian. I wonder if you can spare him for a moment? Lucio's brows knit and a trace of astonishment flashed within his eyes, and in the end he looked at Duan Ling Tian. I can't decide on this. I have to seek Duan Ling Tian's own opinion. At the same time that Lucio spoke to the young man, he condensed his origin energy into sound and transmitted it into Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian, he's the son of the Mizar Peak's master, Zheng Song. The son of the Mizar Peak's peak master, Zheng Fan? Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. No wonder he felt this Zheng Song seems to be extremely similar in appearance to Zheng Fan, so they were father and son. In this way, everything could be explained. Junior brother Duan Ling Tian, I'm Zheng Song. My father is the peak master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. We were meditating as we drank tea in the pavilion earlier when he just happened to see you and asked me to invite you and Elder Lucio to have a seat. Zheng Song looked at Duan Ling Tian and was refined and courteous. The smile on his face caused one to feel as if bathing in spring breeze. Even Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but secretly sigh in his heart. Zheng Song was the son of the Mizar Peak's peak master, and was even an inner court disciple of the 7-star sword sect. In terms of status and strength, he far surpassed the personal disciple of the Merak Peak's master, Hu Shuefeng. But he didn't have the condescending arrogance that Hu Shuefeng possessed, and this was something that was extremely difficult to come by. Although it was the first time he'd met Zheng Song, but Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but have a slight favorable impression towards him in his heart. I have no objection. Duan Ling Tian didn't refuse, and nodded. Junior brother Duan Ling Tian, Elder Lucio, please. Under the lead of Jing Sun, Duan Ling Tian and Lucio walked towards Mizar Hall, and when they approached Mizar Hall, Zheng Sun brought Lucio into the Mizar Hall's audience hall. Duan Ling Tian. Meanwhile, a figure leapt off the pavilion atop Mizar Hall. Duan Ling Tian didn't even have the time to react when he felt a strength that was difficult to resist pass through the person's hand to grab onto his shoulder. Subsequently, Duan Ling Tian flew up. Precisely saying, he was brought flying up by another. This Mizar Peak's master ought to be in existence at the 9th level of the void-prying stage. When my spiritual force inspected him, there was actually a type of fuzzy feeling. Duan Ling Tian was secretly shocked in his heart. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian was brought up the pavilion, and as he stepped onto solid ground, the thick hand that grabbed onto his shoulder had been withdrawn now as well. Duanling Tian looked at the person before him and lightly smiled. Peak Master. The person that brought Duanling Tian onto the pavilion from outside of Mizar Hall was none other than the Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Sit. Zheng Fan's face had a warm smile on it as he asked Duanling Tian to sit. Subsequently, he even personally made tea for Duanling Tian. This caused Duanling Tian to be slightly overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. Zheng Fan poured a cup of tea for Duanling Tian, then introduced it. This is the cloud rice tea I cured myself, try it. Duanling Tian nodded and picked up the teacup, but didn't directly drink it, and instead put it before his nose and smelled it. Tea fragrance entered into his nose. It had a cool and refreshing flavor, as if able to transmit into Duanling Tian's mind and cause Duanling Tian to feel his own consciousness become incomparably clear. Good tea. Although Duanling Tian was well-versed in tea, but he was still able to perceive that this tea wasn't simple. Take a sip and try it. Zheng Fan lightly smiled. Duanling Tian nodded, then placed the teacup by his mouth and lightly took a sip. The fragrant tea dissolved upon entering his mouth, and the cool and refreshing flavor caused Duanling Tian to shudder. He was unable to refrain from closing his eyes, and he felt himself to be slightly floating, as if he had rose into the clouds and was walking on air. Who? After some time, as if descending from the sky and returning to the ground, Duanling Tian let out a mouthful of foul air, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. How is it? Zheng Fan looked at Duanling Tian and asked. Duanling Tian gasped in admiration. Peak Master, this cloud rice tea of yours is truly amazing. It's still the first time that I've drank such a fragrant tea. With only a sip, it allowed me to instantly feel as if rising into the clouds and walking on air. At that moment, it was as if I'd forgotten everything. Haha. Zheng Fan laughed heartily, then slowly said, as a matter of fact, the method of curing this cloud rice tea is something I perfected from an incomplete method in an ancient book. That incomplete curing method was the curing method for a type of fragrant tea called carefree tea. But unfortunately, half of it was incomplete. As he finished speaking, Zheng Fan slightly sighed with emotion. In my entire life, my biggest regret is being unable to savor that genuine carefree tea. Even though cloud rice tea was something I cured according the incomplete curing method of the carefree tea and supplementing it myself, but it isn't the genuine carefree tea. Duanling Tian shook his head and smiled when he heard Zheng Fan. Peak Master, as the saying goes, one who is content will always be happy. There's no reason to insist on some things. Even though carefree tea is good, but that is only your imagination, or perhaps the true complete carefree tea is actually inferior to the cloud rice tea you supplemented and cured. As soon as Duanling Tian finished speaking, Zheng Fan was as if suddenly enlightened and was stunned on the spot. At this moment, only what Duanling Tian said remained within his mind. One who is content will always be happy. Perhaps, the true complete carefree tea is inferior to the current cloud rice tea. Finally, Zheng Fan came back to his senses, and his eyes flickered with traces of a strange sheen. Suddenly, Zheng Fan raised his hand, and a narrow saber that was thin as a cicada's wing and had flowing lights flash on its surface appeared. Grade 6 Spirit Weapon. Duanling Tian's gaze abruptly lit up when he saw the narrow saber in Zheng Fan's hand, as he had identified the grade of the spirit weapon narrow saber. Zheng Fan raised his hand. OM. Origin energy twined around the narrow saber as it emitted a strange and terrifying aura, as if lightly cut through the air, and a clear white flowing light flashed before disappearing. And right at this instant, the aura on the saber in Zheng Fan's hand seemed to change completely. Through the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, and relying on his formidable spiritual force, Duanling Tian was vaguely able to perceive something. Swoosh. And at the instant that the aura atop the narrow saber in Zheng Fan's hand suddenly changed, traces of origin energy appeared on the surface of Zheng Fan's body, then slowly withdrew to finally disappear in the end. Although it was only an extremely short instant, but in Duanling Tian's eyes, Zheng Fan had completely changed. Before Zheng Fan withdrew the imposing manner on his body that had transformed, Duanling Tian lightly smiled. Congratulations, Peak Master. Meanwhile, the raging, imposing aura on Zhang Fan's body was slowly withdrawn by him, and the narrow saber in his hand vanished along with the imposing manner. It was put away into his spiritual ring by him. Haha. Suddenly, Zhang Fan couldn't refrain from laughing loudly. Zhang Fan's laughter was unrestrained and carefree. It was also mixed with traces of inexplicable excitement. Duanling Tian was naturally clear of why Zhang Fan was excited. Otherwise, he wouldn't have congratulated Zhang Fan earlier. Duanling Tian, you're able to discern what had occurred to me just now? Finally, Zhang Fan suppressed the wild joy in his heart, then looked at Duanling Tian with eyes that flickered with a sheen of wisdom, as he wanted to see through Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian lightly smiled. Congratulations, Peak Master, for comprehending the concept of saber, and broke through to the void initiation stage in one go. He was naturally able to discern what had occurred to Zhang Fan earlier. The words he said allowed Zhang Fan to be enlightened. Although it was only a small matter in life, but it was like a knot in Zhang Fan's heart. Perhaps, even Zhang Fan himself never realized that just because of this knot in his heart, it had trapped him, causing him to be unable to comprehend the concept of saber for so long, and was unable to break through to the void initiation stage. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duanling Tian understood that if one wanted to break through to the void initiation stage, then besides requiring a cultivation at the 9th level of the void prying stage, one must also have sufficient comprehension ability. Only when one made their force transform into concept would a 9th level origin core stage expert be able to break through to the void initiation stage. This was the iron law of Cloud Continent. So, this was also the main reason why a void initiation expert couldn't be fostered directly using treasures of heaven and earth. It was precisely because of this that Duanling Tian repudiated that the mysterious yellow-clothed young girl, Han Xuanai, was a void initiation stage expert that day. In his eyes and the eyes of the formed Rebirth Martial Emperor, even if the comprehension ability of a 15 or 16-year-old girl was any higher or any more heaven-defying, it would still be impossible for her to comprehend concept. Duanling Tian, I've still underestimated you. Zhang Fan deeply glanced at Duanling Tian. His gaze of wisdom seemed as if able to see through everything. A person like you who came from a small kingdom under the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom is actually able to know of concept as well? Looks like you really aren't simple. Duanling Tian's brows knit, and glanced at Zhang Fan with a slightly surprised gaze. Peak Master, you seem to know me rather well. He didn't feel it to be strange that Zhang Fan knew that he came from a kingdom that was subordinate to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. As half a year ago when he had just entered the 7-Star Sword Sect, he had spoken of this matter in front of Lu Qiu and the group of new disciples. So, there was surely many people within the 7-Star Sword Sect who now knew of his background. Duanling Tian, no matter what, if it wasn't for you today, it would be impossible for me to have broken through this bottleneck that has persisted for many years. I, Zhang Fan, owe you a favor. Zhang Fan looked at Duanling Tian, and his face went serious as he promised. He deeply knew that if it wasn't for Duanling Tian awakening him to the truth, it would be impossible for him to directly break through. This favor was extremely huge, heavy like Mount Tai. A wisp of joy appeared on Duanling Tian's face when he heard Zhang Fan, and he didn't refuse. Then I'll thank Peak Master first. After today, the person before him would not only be the Peak Master of Mizar Peak. He was also a formidable Void Initiation Stage expert. A Void Initiation expert. Even in the entire 7-Star Sword Sect, it was still something that could be counted with the fingers on one's hand, and it was the absolute pills of the 7-Star Sword Sect. A promise from a Void Initiation Stage expert couldn't be measured with money. Zhang Fan's promise was undoubtedly a great trump card to Duanling Tian. Zhang Fan nodded, and his eyes sized up Duanling Tian with interest, then asked, Duanling Tian, if I intend to take you as a disciple, would you be willing to take me as your master? As soon as Zhang Fan finished speaking, Duanling Tian was stunned. No matter what, he had never imagined that Zhang Fan would suddenly say this. Ask him to acknowledge a master? Zhang Fan thought Duan Ling Tian was hesitant when he saw Duan Ling Tian being stunned, then continued. If you take me as your master, I'm willing to bestow this tearless knight to you as a meeting gift. As he spoke, a narrow saber that was thin as a cicada's wing appeared in Zhang Fan's hand. The narrow saber was dark violet in color, like a specter in the night, flickering with strands of awe-inspiring coldness. It was precisely the grade 6 spirit saber Zhang Fan carried around with him everywhere. In the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, a grade 6 spirit weapon was an extremely valuable thing. There were quite a few grade 6 alchemists in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, but grade 6 weapons craftsmen could be counted on one's fingers. Meanwhile, Duan Ling Tian recovered from his shock. Grade 6 spirit weapon? Truthfully speaking, he was really not interested in this grade 6 spirit saber. He was already a 7th level origin core stage martial artist now, and was able to condense grade 7 weapon flame and was a grade 7 weapons craftsman. Once he broke through to the nascent soul stage, he would be able to condense a grade 6 weapon flame and become a grade 6 weapons craftsman. At that time, he himself would be able to refine a grade 6 spirit weapon. Peak Master, everyone in the 7-star sword sect uses swords. I never expected that you used a saber. Duan Ling Tian glanced at the grade 6 spirit saber in Zhang Fan's hand, Tearless Knight, and lightly smiled. Zhang Fan lightly stroked the blade of Tearless Knight, and his gaze became slightly misty. After a long time, he sighed. I and my wife discovered this grade 6 spirit saber deep within the primeval forest all those years ago. At that time, I still wasn't the peak master of Mizar Peak. At that time, this grade 6 spirit saber was within the lair of a formidable nascent soul stage fierce beast. I originally intended to give up, but for the sake of allowing me to pass the test and become the inheritor of the Mizar Peak's peak master, she insisted on going to get this grade 6 spirit saber. In the end, for the sake of this grade 6 spirit saber, she was killed by that fierce beast. Even though Zhang Fan spoke calmly, but Duan Ling Tian was still able to feel traces of melancholy within his voice. She was one of the outstanding members of Alcade Peak, with natural talent and strength not inferior to me. In my entire life, what I regret the most was not stopping her that time, and instead accompanied her to do such an insane thing. As he finished speaking, his figure lightly trembled and had a slight sense of loss. Later on, that nascent soul stage fierce beast was killed by me with this grade 6 spirit saber. Before she died, she named this grade 6 spirit saber Tearless Knight. Knight is the name of this saber. As for Tearless, I understand in my heart that she wanted me and song not to shed tears for her. Later on, relying on the 40% amplification of strength provided by this grade 6 spirit saber, I easily passed the Mizar Peak's Peak Master's Inheritors test and was fostered by the previous generation's Mizar Peak's Master, then controlled Mizar Peak later on. In fact, everything I have now was something she gave me. As Zhang Fan spoke, his eyes became slightly wet. Grade 6 spirit saber that provided an amplification of 40%? Duan Ling Tian's eyes squinted. Even though once he broke through to the nascent soul stage and became a grade 6 weapons craftsman, he would also be able to refine a grade 6 spirit weapon that provided a 40% amplification, but that was because he'd inherited all the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, who was a royal grade weapons craftsman. He could imagine how the weapons craftsman that refined this grade 6 spirit saber was extraordinary. But at the same time, he was shocked in his heart. Duan Ling Tian could deeply feel the love Zhang Fan's wife had for him. For the sake of her husband's future, she would not spare any cost, even her own life. The string deep within his heart was stirred. Zhang Fan's wife was worthy of respect. Later on, for the sake of this Tearless Knight, I started to abandon the sword and train in the saber, changing to cultivate saber skills. Zhang Fan let out a breath of air, then looked at Duan Ling Tian as he forced a trace of a smile on his face. If you're willing to become my disciples, I presume my wife would agree to me bestowing this Tearless Knight that has extraordinary meaning to you. Peak Master. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. I'm sorry, I don't have any intentions of taking a master now. As for this Tearless Knight, It has an extraordinary meaning to you. You should keep it properly." Zhang Fan didn't speak and seriously looked at Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian looked back in his eyes with a firm and unchanging gaze. He's inherited the lifetime's worth of memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor and was same as having inherited the pride of the Rebirth Martial Emperor. The pride of the Rebirth Martial Emperor caused him to be bound to not take someone weaker than the Rebirth Martial Emperor as his master. After a long time, Zhang Fan seemed to be able to perceive Duanling Tian's resolution, and he nodded. "Never mind. Everyone has their own aspirations. Even if you really take me as your master, I probably don't have anything to teach you." As he finished speaking, Zhang Fan didn't insist. "Peak Master, then I'll take my leave first." Duanling Tian lightly smiled to Zhang Fan, then his figure flashed to leap off the pavilion and firmly descend onto the ground. Zhang Fan stood before the pavilion and looked at Duanling Tian's figure with a complicated gaze. What sort of person is he actually? Able to behave so composed when faced with a super top quality grade 6 spirit sword that's able to provide an amplification of 40%. This kid will surely be extraordinary in the future. Truly the fortune of my 7-star sword sect. Meanwhile, Lucio, who was originally waiting for Duanling Tian, saw Duanling Tian appear, and he bid his farewell to Zhang Song, who was beside him, before walking towards Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian and Lucio walked shoulder to shoulder and continued up Dubhe Peak. Their destination, Migres Hall. Zhang Fan came back to his senses when he saw Duanling Tian's figure disappear into the distance, and he sighed. He and Duanling Tian were bound to not have the fate of being master and disciple. "Father." Meanwhile, Zhang Song arrived at the pavilion and asked, "Did he agree?" Obviously, Zhang Song knew of Zhang Fan's intentions. Zhang Fan shook his head. "No. No?" Zhang Song was stunned. That Duanling Tian is really so arrogant? Even father, the peak master of Mizar Peak, condescending yourself to take him as your personal disciple, and he still refused? It's far more than that. The corners of Zhang Fan's mouth curled into a bitter smile. "I even took out Tearless Night that your mother left for me," but he seemed to not be willing to even spare a glance. Tearless Night. Zhang Song's pupils constricted, as he never expected that for the sake of Duanling Tian, his father would even take out this grade 6 spirit saber that had extraordinary meaning. And what he never expected even more was that when faced with the temptation of a grade 6 spirit saber, Duanling Tian actually wasn't moved. Such composure was truly shocking. After all, even in the entire 7-star sword sect, the grade 6 spirit saber in his father's possession could only be compared to by the grade 5 spirit sword in the sect leader's possession, in terms of the amplification ability. The grade 6 spirit swords in the possession of the other peak masters and even guardian elders were far inferior from the grade 6 spirit saber in his father's possession, the Tearless Knight. "Father, I heard your laughter earlier. Why did you laugh?" Zhang Song looked at Zhang Fan with a wondering expression. Zhang Fan smiled mysteriously. He heard his son's question. "In your opinion, what is worthy of me laughing heartily now?" "Father, just speak frankly." Zhang Song smiled bitterly. How could he guess it? "I've broken through," Zhang Fan slowly said with a calm tone. However, it instead caused Zhang Song to be stunned on the spot and was unable to recover from his shock as he said in a daze, "Father, you said you've broken through?" Zhang Song looked at Zhang Fan with a face full of pleasant surprise and disbelief. "Yes." Zhang Fan lightly smiled as he nodded. "All thanks to Duanling Tian." "Duanling Tian?" Zhang Song was slightly uncertain. What can an outer court disciple like him help father with? "Father, are you mistaken? This has nothing to do with if he's an outer court disciple or not." Zhang Fan shook his head. "Today, even if the sect leader personally arrived, he still might not be able to help me break through. To sum it all up, if it wasn't because of Duanling Tian, I would probably still need a long time to break through. I owe him a great favor." Zhang Song let out a breath of cold air, as it was truly difficult for him to imagine how the heck an outer court disciple helped his father break through. In next to no time, under his deep inquires into the root of the matter, Zhang Fan spoke of the sequence of events. Zhang Song came to a sudden understanding. Duan Ling Tian. Zhang Song's heart was filled with gratefulness to Duan Ling Tian. He was extremely clear of how long his father had stayed at the 9th level of the void-prying stage. Today, if it wasn't for Duan Ling Tian who awakened his father to the truth, even if another few years passed, his father might not be able to smoothly break through to the void initiation stage. This was indeed a great favor. Duan Ling Tian and Lu Qiu continued to walk along the mountain path of Dubhe Peak. The Migres Hall was above. Elder Lu Qiu, when is the 7-star sword sect inner court disciple test ordinarily held? On the way, Duan Ling Tian thought of the objective he had left the stalactite cave with today and asked Lu Qiu who was by his side. There's an inner court disciples test every 6 months and is usually 1 month after the outer court disciple test. Today just happened to be the day of the outer court disciple test. So, the inner court disciple test is precisely 1 month away from now. Lu Qiu slowly said. Presently, after witnessing Duan Ling Tian's cultivation to be at the 8th level of the origin core stage, he wasn't surprised by Duan Ling Tian's inquiry about the inner court disciple test. As far as he was concerned, with Duan Ling Tian's current strength, passing through the inner court disciple test was extremely easy. When an outer court disciple broke through to the 8th level of the origin core stage, passing through the inner court disciple test was practically certain. After a month? Duan Ling Tian nodded, then asked, Elder Lu Qiu, does this inner court disciple test require additional registration? Lu Qiu shook his head. No, just go directly to the Dubhe Peak's test platform on the day of the inner court disciple test. Test platform? Duan Ling Tian was stunned, as he wasn't familiar with the main peak, Dubhe Peak. The test platform is the vast platform that you participated in the outer court disciple test 6 months ago. Lu Qiu patiently explained, with a shred of impatience. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian currently had a boundless future. In the future, if Duan Ling Tian were to stay in the 7-star sword sect, he would surely be an important person of the 7-star sword sect, and becoming the next generation sect leader of the 7-star sword sect might not be impossible. If he were to leave the 7-star sword sect, he would surely be a great figure whose name shocked the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. According to his knowledge, in the history of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there hasn't been even one figure that could compare to Duan Ling Tian in terms of natural talent in the martial Dao. He was convinced that once Duan Ling Tian matured, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom might not be able to contain Duan Ling Tian. So that's the test platform. Duan Ling Tian came to a sudden understanding. He remembered that vast platform clearly, and it was the place he participated in the outer court disciple test that day after all. Before long, Duan Ling Tian and Lu Qiu finally arrived at the location of Migres Hall. Migres Hall was similarly on a vast platform on Dubhe Peak and had a vast, imposing manner. Duan Ling Tian and Lu Qiu walked swiftly over, then stood shoulder to shoulder outside the Migres Hall. Peak Master, Lu Qiu and Duan Ling Tian seek an audience. Lu Qiu stood before Migres Hall and spoke in a loud voice. His voice contained origin energy and extended and spread out to envelop the entire Migres Hall. In next to no time, a gaunt young man around the age of 26 or 27 with slight gloominess mixed within between his brows walked out of Migres Hall. His sharp eyes squinted as he gazed at Duan Ling Tian and Lu Qiu who stood outside. Master asked the two of you to enter. The voice of this young man was hoarse and low, causing one to feel uncomfortable when hearing it. Duan Ling Tian couldn't help but frown. He's our Migres Peak's master's foster son, Wu Yongqian. Lu Qiu condensed his origin energy into sound and transmitted it into Duan Ling Tian's ears. Duan Ling Tian nodded and walked forward shoulder to shoulder with Lu Qiu, and under the lead of Wu Yongqian, they walked in the audience hall of Migres Hall. At the instant he entered the audience hall, Duan Ling Tian saw the middle-aged man that stood within. This middle-aged man had a similar age to the peak master of Mizar Peak, Zhang Fan, and had an extremely ordinary appearance, the type of appearance that couldn't be found within a crowd of people. Duanling Tian's spiritual force was able to vaguely discern that the cultivation of this middle-aged man ought to be similar to Zhang Fan before he broke through. Ninth level of the void prying stage. He ought to be the peak master of Migres Peak. Duanling Tian thought inwardly. Even though he had never met the peak master of Migres Peak before, but as a disciple of Migres Peak, he'd still heard of the peak master. The peak master of Migres Peak was called Wu Dao. Foster father, they have come. As expected, after Wu Yongqian brought Duanling Tian and Lu Qiu in, he bowed and reported to Wu Dao, and his hoarse and low voice was filled with reverence. Subsequently, Wu Yongqian went to stand behind Wu Dao. Peak master. Lu Qiu respectfully saluted Wu Dao. Peak master. Duanling Tian nodded to Wu Dao as well. If it was at another time, and Duanling Tian was here alone, perhaps no one would mind. But now, the attitude Duanling Tian had when facing Wu Dao instead formed a contrasting comparison to Lu Qiu. Wu Dao lightly frowned and was slightly displeased. Presumptuous. An awe-inspiring sheen appeared within the sharp gaze of Wu Yongqian, who stood behind Wu Dao as he looked at Duanling Tian and shouted coldly. However, Duanling Tian paid no attention to Wu Yongqian, and instead looked at Wu Dao with a carefree expression, as if his expression wouldn't change even if Mount Tai collapsed. Wu Yongqian's face sank when he saw Duanling Tian disregarding him, and a gloomy cold light flickered within his eyes, seeming to be waiting to swallow Duanling Tian up. Lu Qiu stood by Duanling Tian's side, and was worried for Duanling Tian now. You are Duanling Tian? Wu Dao's brows relaxed. A wisp of a coldness and fierceness arose within his eyes as he stared at Duanling Tian. At the same time, a formidable, imposing manner surged out from Wu Dao's body to press onto Duanling Tian's body. The imposing manner of a ninth-level void prying stage expert. But, when faced with Wu Dao's formidable, imposing manner, Duanling Tian seemed as if to have no feeling, and he stood there on the spot with an unfazed expression, not moving like a mountain. The imposing manner on Wu Dao's body ceaselessly rose. Duanling Tian's expression still remained unchanged, and a wisp of a smile even appeared on the corners of his mouth. That was the smile of being unperturbed. What a fellow! Finally, Wu Dao's imposing manner was completely withdrawn by him, and he laughed heartily. The displeasure from earlier had vanished. As expected of the existence that's able to kill the number one disciple in the outer court, sure how. Duanling Tian, you're worthy of the title of number one disciple in the 7-star sword sect's outer court. Duanling Tian made nothing of Wu Dao's sudden changes of countenance, and he nodded. Thank you for your praise, Peak Master. When Wu Yongqian heard Wu Dao praising Duanling Tian, his cold and fierce gaze had a trace of a sheen of envy and viciousness. He was the foster son of Wu Dao, but from when he was young, he'd never once heard Wu Dao praise him. Neither arrogant nor humble, an exceptional talent. Wu Dao looked at Duanling Tian and nodded in satisfaction, then said, Duanling Tian, you killed Sure Hao and seized the first place in the outer court martial competition and have brought honor to our Migres Peak this time. Tell me, what reward do you want? Reward? Duanling Tian frowned. Wu Dao's manner of speaking was filled with a condescending feeling, as if someone of high position was speaking to someone lowly, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. Peak Master, I'm a member of Migres Peak. Before I leave Migres Peak, doing something for the Migres Peak is something I ought to do. Duanling Tian said indifferently and was slightly disinterested. Leaving Migres Peak? Wu Dao was stunned when he heard Duanling Tian, then recovered from his shock and nodded. I nearly forgot. You obtained the first place in the outer court martial competition and also obtain a profound origin fruit. If nothing unexpected happened, you ought to be already at the 7th level of the origin core stage now. 7th level origin core stage? The corners of the nearby Lu Qiu's mouth twitch. He felt the Wu Dao truly underestimated Duanling Tian. With your methods, it isn't difficult to pass the inner court disciple test after you step into the 7th level of the origin core stage. Wu Dao looked at Duanling Tian and pondered for a moment, and a burning, flowing light appeared within his eyes as he stared fixedly at Duanling Tian. Duan Ling Tian, do you know why I asked Lucio to go bring you here? Duan Ling Tian shook his head. Peak Master, please clarify. Duan Ling Tian, I don't like to beat around the bush, so I'll be straightforward. At the same time that Wu Dao spoke, not only Duan Ling Tian and Lu Qiu, but even Wu Yongqian, who stood behind Wu Dao, all looked at Wu Dao. Finally, Wu Dao took a breath, then said in a clear voice, I, Wu Dao, the Peak Master of Migres Peak, desire to take you, Duan Ling Tian, as my personal disciple. At the instant Wu Dao said this, all the three of them, including Duan Ling Tian, were dumbstruck. Duan Ling Tian was speechless. When did he become so popular? Duan Ling Tian recovered from his shock and shook his head. Peak Master, I'm sorry. I temporarily have no intention of taking a master. He even refused Zhang Fan, who had broken through to the void initiation stage now, let alone this Wu Dao. Presumptuous. Wu Yongqian, who stood behind Wu Dao, had a belly full of flames of envy that practically exploded his chest open when he heard his foster father wanted to take Duan Ling Tian as a personal disciple. Now, seeing that Duan Ling Tian actually directly refusing his foster father, he completely exploded out. Duan Ling Tian continued to choose to ignore him when faced with Wu Yongqian, who was about to go berserk, as if he entirely disregarded Wu Yongqian. He indeed didn't take Wu Yongqian to heart. Duan Ling Tian's disregard caused Wu Yongqian's flames of rage to practically burn to the limit. As the foster son of the Migres Peak's Peak Master and a 7-star sword sect inner court disciple, when had he been disregarded by someone like this? Wu Dao's face slightly sank when being refused by Duan Ling Tian, and a bright light arose within his eyes as he stared at Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian, you refuse me so straightforwardly? As the Peak Master of Migres Peak, Wu Dao had his own pride. Now that Duan Ling Tian actually brazenly refused his good intentions, it caused a ball of flames to arise within his heart. Peak Master, I'm sorry. Duan Ling Tian had a calm gaze when faced with Wu Dao, who had a face full of displeasure, and said indifferently. Lu Qiu, who stood by Duan Ling Tian's side, had a wisp of a bitter smile on his face, and he sighed in his heart. This little fellow, it's his fortune that the Peak Master wants to take him as a disciple, but he actually refused it. Lu Qiu had never imagined that Duan Ling Tian would actually refuse to become Wu Dao's personal disciple. Although Duan Ling Tian's natural talent in the martial Dao could be considered heaven-defying, but he hadn't matured yet after all, and seeking a good master within the 7-star sword sect was undoubtedly of great benefit to him. On the other side, Duan Ling Tian could still obtain a backing that would cause those people who wanted to do harm to him to feel afraid. Now, Duan Ling Tian's decision completely exceeded his expectations. Wu Dao, the Peak Master of Migres Peak, an expert whose strength could be placed in the top 10 of the 7-star sword sect, actually desired to take Duan Ling Tian as his personal disciple, but Duan Ling Tian straightforwardly refused him without any considerations for Wu Dao's feelings. This caused his scalp to go numb. Duan Ling Tian. Wu Dao's gaze slowly became calm, but his expression when looking at Duan Ling Tian didn't have the face filled with smile from before, and his tone was slightly low. Looks like you're extremely confident of your strength. Do you think that with your natural talent, I, Wu Dao, the Peak Master of Migres Peak, don't have the qualifications to be your master? Duan Ling Tian frowned, then shook his head and said, Peak Master, I've never thought like this. It's only that I temporarily don't have the intention of taking a master. Take a master? Since he merged with the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, it was equal to Duan Ling Tian having a master in a different form, a master that didn't hold back from him in the slightest. That master was the Rebirth Martial Emperor. The Rebirth Martial Emperor had once been an expert that stood at the peak of Cloud Continent. Now, Duan Ling Tian could be considered to be refusing in a mild manner. If he really were to say what he thought in his heart, he would say to Wu Dao, Want me to take you as my master? Are you worthy? Duan Ling Tian's polite refusal was undoubtedly an excuse in Wu Dao's ears, causing Wu Dao's expression to become even gloomier. Duan Ling Tian, you're extremely confident. But a person can be confident, but once a person is overconfident, then it's conceited. Today, Since I, Wu Dao, have spoken, wanting to take you as my personal disciple, then I naturally wouldn't easily take it back. Wu Dao's gaze descended onto Duan Ling Tian, and his words were filled with an indisputable overbearingness. Peak Master, nothing forcibly done is good. Duan Ling Tian's face slightly sank, as he never expected the Peak Master would be so hard to deal with. At this moment, he felt that Zhang Fan was so amiable when compared to Wu Dao. Could it be that this Wu Dao wanted to force him to take Wu Dao as his master? Lu Qiu slightly frowned, as he felt Wu Dao was slightly going too far. But Wu Dao was the Peak Master of Migres Peak, where he was only an outer court disciple of Migres Peak. Thus there was a great disparity in their statuses. So, even if he didn't like it, he didn't dare say anything. Duan Ling Tian, since I've already spoken, there's naturally no room for taking it back. Wu Dao had a terrifyingly calm voice. Duan Ling Tian's brows knit together. Is this Wu Dao a madman? If I'm unwilling to take him as my master, he's still able to force me? Of course. Suddenly, Wu Dao spoke once again, and looked at Duan Ling Tian. I can give you a chance. Battle my foster son. If you can defeat my foster son, I can take it as I never spoke earlier. But if you suffer defeat at the hands of my foster son, then you must obediently become the personal disciple of I, Wu Dao. You can give up this opportunity, but after you give up, no matter if you're willing or not, you, Duan Ling Tian, will be the personal disciple of I, Wu Dao. If you dare speak rashly outside and deny being the disciple of I, Wu Dao, then you're going against I, Wu Dao. In the future, there won't be place for you in the 7-Star Sword sect anymore. As he finished speaking, Wu Dao's tone was filled with overbearingness and tyranny. Duan Ling Tian's face sank. This Wu Dao, so overbearing. There won't be a place for me in the 7-Star Sword sect anymore? Does this Wu Dao really think he's the sect leader of the 7-Star Sword sect? If one were to say who was the happiest at this moment, it would undoubtedly be Wu Yongqian who stood behind Wu Dao. Duan Ling Tian, do you dare fight me? Wu Yongqian looked at Duan Ling Tian with eyes that flickered with a sharp light, and the corners of his mouth curled into a cold and indifferent smile. As far as he was concerned, this was an opportunity. If he defeated this Duan Ling Tian, his foster father would surely be extremely pleased. And the status he possessed within the heart of his foster father would surely rise. Peak Master, will you keep your word? Duan Ling Tian still disregarded Wu Yongqian, and when Wu Yongqian's expression became incomparably ferocious, he looked at Wu Dao and asked indifferently. His tone didn't contain any feeling. I, Wu Dao, am the Peak Master of Migres Peak. Would I deceive a kid like you? Wu Dao sneered when he heard Duan Ling Tian, but traces of bright lights appeared within his eyes. He knew that Duan Ling Tian had taken the bait. Even though he had heard of Duan Ling Tian killing Shi, Hao with a cultivation at the 6th level of the Origin Core stage, and knew Duan Ling Tian had the ability to kill enemies that were stages higher than him. But as far as he was concerned, even if Duan Ling Tian had broken through to the 7th level of the Origin Core stage now, it would still be impossible for Duan Ling Tian to be a match for his foster son. Even though the natural talent of his foster son wasn't high, but his foster son was a 9th level Origin Core stage inner court disciple after all. Even if Duan Ling Tian had broken through to the 7th level of the Origin Core stage, that would also be having just broken through, and Duan Ling Tian's foundation wouldn't be stable yet. Moreover, Qian. A wisp of coldness appeared on the corners of Wu Dao's mouth as he suddenly spoke. Foster father. Wu Yongqian withdrew his vicious gaze from Duan Ling Tian and looked respectfully at Wu Dao. In his heart, his foster father was the heavens that couldn't be defied. Duan Ling Tian frowned. What did this Wu Dao want to do? In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian saw a 3-foot-long blade appear out of thin air in Wu Dao's hand, and Duan Ling Tian's face went grim. Qian, use father's autumn water, and properly experience the ability of the number 1 disciple in our 7-Star Sword sect's outer court. Wu Dao passed the 3-foot-long blade in his hand to Wu Yongqian. This 3-foot-long blade had a smooth blade that was flickered with translucence, like a pool of autumn water swaying. Grade 6 Spirit Sword. Lu Qiu, who stood beside Duanling Tian, had a shocked expression and couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice when he saw the 3-foot-long blade in Wu Dao's hand. Autumn Water. Wasn't it the Grade 6 Spirit Sword in the possession of the Migres Peak's master, Wu Dao? He never imagined that for the sake of allowing his foster son, Wu Yongqian, to defeat Duanling Tian, Wu Dao actually even took out the Grade 6 Spirit Sword he carried everywhere on his person. Wu Dao's actions caused Lu Qiu to feel uncomfortable in his heart. As far as he was concerned, in this way, even if Wu Yongqian were to win, it was a victory that didn't rely on Wu Yongqian's own strength. Yes, foster father. Wu Yongqian's eyes lit up and solemnly received Autumn Water. His figure slightly trembled as he was rather excited. Grade 6 Spirit Sword. Even though as far as Wu Yongqian was concerned, even if he didn't have a Grade 7 Spirit Sword, it would be impossible for Duanling Tian to be his match. But now that he had the opportunity to use his foster father's Grade 6 Spirit Sword, it still caused him to feel a burst of joy. Don't let me down, Wu Dao indifferently said to Wu Yongqian. Don't worry, foster father. Wu Yongqian solemnly nodded. He held Autumn Water in his hands, as his fierce gaze descended onto Duanling Tian, seeming to be waiting to swallow Duanling Tian up. Meanwhile, Duanling Tian's expression eased up slightly. But his gaze when he looked at Wu Dao instead became icy cold and unfamiliar. For the sake of making me his personal disciple, this Wu Dao is actually despicable to this extent, even taking out his own Grade 6 Spirit Sword and passing it to Wu Yongqian, just for the sake of allowing Wu Yongqian to defeat me. If it was said that Duanling Tian was dissatisfied of Wu Dao earlier, then now, he held Wu Dao in disdain from the bottom of his heart. As far as he was concerned, this was a person that couldn't take a loss. Asking an inner court disciple to deal with an outer court disciple like Duanling Tian was already a victory that wasn't because of one's strength, but now he actually even took out his Grade 6 Spirit Sword. Was there any difference from cheating? Such a person wants to become my master? Duanling Tian's face seemed to be covered in a layer of cold ice, and he looked calmly at Wu Yongqian, who stared at him fiercely. He noticed the confidence on Wu Yongqian's face. This Wu Yongqian really thought that he would be able to defeat me once he had a Grade 6 Spirit Sword? The corners of Duanling Tian's mouth curled into a wisp of disdain that was difficult to notice. Meanwhile, Wu Dao retreated a few steps, and under his gaze Lu Qiu moved aside to observe from the side. For a time, there was an empty space within the vast audience hall. Duanling Tian and Wu Yongqian stood facing each other. Whoosh! In Duanling Tian's hand, a 3-foot-long blade appeared out of thin air. It was precisely the Grade 7 Spirit Sword he withdrew from his spatial ring. Even though Duanling Tian was a Grade 7 weapons craftsman now, and was even capable of refining a Grade 7 spirit weapon that provided an amplification of 31%, but he still didn't refine one himself yet. This Grade 7 Spirit Sword was one of the spoils from his previous battles, and possessed an ordinary amplification ability. Duanling Tian, my foster father wanted to take you as a personal disciple, and that's looking highly of you. You, not only were you not be grateful for his kindness, but actually arrogantly refused. Today, I, Wu Yongqian, will properly teach you a lesson in my foster father's place. I will let you know that there are always others that are stronger than you. At the same time that Wu Yongqian's cold and indifferent voice sounded out, traces of a sheen of origin energy fluctuations arose on Autumn Water in his hand. The origin energy increased explosively and raged about. Swoosh! Instantly, lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form, one by one, above Wu Dao. He prepared to dash out at any moment. Wu Yongqian, an inner court disciple of the 7-star sword sect, and a 9th-level origin core stage martial artists. At full force, he was able to exert the strength of 120 ancient mammoths. Now, relying on the Grade 6 Spirit Sword, Autumn Water. 164 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form in the air above Wu Yongqian. Autumn Water, a Grade 6 Spirit Sword, provided an amplification of the strength of 44 ancient mammoths to Wu Yongqian. A grade 6 spirit sword that provides an amplification of 37%? A wisp of disdain appeared on the corners of Duanling Tian's mouth, and the grade 7 spirit sword in his hand trembled suddenly, drawing out a pattern in the air that was dazzling and resplendent. OM. At the same time, origin energy jumped out and bloomed to be incomparably magnificent on the grade 7 spirit sword. Instantly, first 110 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared above Duanling Tian. Then suddenly, along with the fluctuating of the origin energy on his grade 7 spirit sword, the ancient mammoth silhouettes explosively increased to 140. The strength of 140 ancient mammoths. 8th level origin core stage? The strength that Duanling Tian revealed now caused the gaze of Wu Dao, who stood in the distance, to focus, and a sense of astonishment appeared on his face. He was able to discern that Duanling Tian was able to exert such a formidable strength by using his 8th level origin core stage cultivation and relying on his grade 7 spirit sword. 8th level of the origin core stage at the age of a little over 20? A profound origin fruit allowed him to directly break through from the 6th level of the origin core stage to the 8th level of the origin core stage. Wu Dao was extremely shocked in his heart and slightly couldn't believe that the scene before him was real. However, all this occurred before his eyes, and he had to believe it. Only now did he realize that he had still underestimated Duanling Tian. Now, his heart slightly sank. Even though his foster son, Wu Yongqian, had a grade 6 spirit sword in his hand, but he never imagined that Duanling Tian had actually broken through to the 8th level of the origin core stage. He had heard of the outer court martial competition that was carried out a few days ago. Duanling Tian relief on a strength that was weaker than Shi Hao by 20 over ancient mammoths to kill Shi Hao. Now, the strength that his foster son, Wu Yongqian, exerted was only the strength of 24 ancient mammoths more than Duanling Tian. Wu Dao took a deep breath and eased his mood up, and his pair of sharp eyes stared fixedly at Duanling Tian with a surging state of mood. Let me see if you're able to defeat the stronger with a weaker strength like what you did in the outer court martial competition from a few days ago, and defeat my useless foster son. Useless foster son. This was the evaluation of Wu Yongqian that Wu Dao had in his heart. That year, the only reason he took Wu Yongqian as his foster son and brought Wu Yongqian back to the 7-star sword sect was because he liked the natural talent that Wu Yongqian revealed during Wu Yongqian's younger days. Unexpectedly, after a few years passed, Wu Yongqian's natural talent slowly seemed to become common, and it caused him to be extremely disappointed. This time, when he heard of Duanling Tian's deed, he originally thought that he could take a personal disciple that would become an all-powerful figure on the stage that is the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom in the future. But unexpectedly, Duanling Tian actually decisively refused him. Lucio stood in the distance and wasn't surprised when he saw the strength that Duanling Tian revealed. Today, on the chain bridge before they arrived at Dubhe Peak, he'd already seen Duanling Tian's strength and knew that Duanling Tian was already an 8th level origin core stage martial artist now. 8th level origin core stage? Wu Yongqian stared at Duanling Tian, and coldness arose in his sharp eyes as he said in a hoarse and low voice, Duanling Tian, today, I'll rely on my foster father's autumn water to defeat you. I want to let you know the difference between an inner court disciple and outer court disciples is something you're unable to pass. Although he knew that Duanling Tian was an 8th level origin core stage martial artist now, but Wu Yongqian wasn't afraid in the slightest. As far as he was concerned, the rumors about the outer court martial competition from a few days ago was very likely an exaggerated truth from the crowd of 7-star sword sect outer court disciples. He didn't believe that Duanling Tian had such an ability. He suspected that Duanling Tian was actually already a 7th level origin core stage martial artist at that time, and only intentionally concealed his cultivation before others. Later on, when Duanling Tian fought Shi Hao, Duanling Tian revealed the strength of a 7th level origin core stage martial artist at the critical moment, and only then was he able to kill Shi Hao, who was careless. Now, when he saw the cultivation at the 8th level of the origin core stage that Duanling Tian revealed, he was even surer in his heart of the previous guess he made. It was impossible for the profound origin fruit to allow a 6th level origin core stage martial artist to directly break through to the 8th level of the origin core stage. If Duanling Tian knew Wu Yongqian's current thoughts, he wouldn't feel surprised. A profound origin fruit was indeed unable to allow him to break through to the 8th level of the origin core stage, and he currently wasn't at the 8th level of the origin core stage. He was only a 7th level origin core stage martial artist. Because of the uniqueness of the 9 Dragons War sovereign technique that he cultivated, is instead allowed him to possess a strength that was no inferior to an 8th-level origin core stage martial artist when he was only at the 7th level of the origin core stage. I'm unable to pass the distance between an inner court disciple and outer court disciple? Duanling Tian smiled indifferently when he heard Wu Yongqian's provocative words, and his eyes narrowed into a line. I don't know about other inner court disciples, but I really didn't take you, Wu Yongqian, to heart. He had always returned respect tenfold. This Wu Yongqian had aroused killing intent against him earlier, although he didn't pay attention to it, but it didn't mean that he didn't care. Inner court disciple? So what? I'll bash you all the same. A cold light flashed within Duanling Tian's eyes. You're courting death. When Duanling Tian's words entered into Wu Yongqian's ears, it caused him to go berserk, and his figure flashed out as if transforming into a gust of wind that swept towards Duanling Tian. Nether sword technique. At the same time that Wu Yongqian flashed out, his hoarse and low voice had an intent of slaughter mixed within. The autumn water in his hand suddenly vanished, and when it appeared next, it wasn't a moment before it vanished once again. Nether sword technique? Relying on his formidable spiritual force and the lifetime worth of experiences in martial arts of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duanling Tian saw through the profundity of the sword skill that Wu Yongqian executed with a single glance. This sword skill was none other than stressing upon surprise attacks. This was something that was extremely similar to his sword drawing arts. But its speed was inferior to the sword drawing arts. The nether sword technique strived for the integration of fast and slow. When it was fast, it was like a swift bolt of lightning, causing it to be difficult to be caught by one's eyes. When it was slow, it was like a cool breeze stroking the clouds, confusing the vision of the opponent. Whoosh! Duanling Tian felt a gust of wind blow against his face, but it was Wu Yongqian who had flashed before him, and that nether sword technique that caused one to find it difficult to ascertain it following behind Wu Yongqian like a shadow, vanishing in the next moment after it appeared again. Of course, although Duanling Tian's eyes were unable to ascertain the location of Wu Yongqian's sword, but his spiritual force was still able to clearly sense it. Die! Suddenly, Wu Yongqian shouted explosively, with crimson red eyes as he attacked with his full strength. Duanling Tian could clearly sense with his spiritual force that the autumn water in Wu Yongqian's hand had now flashed towards his abdomen, desiring to heavily injure him. Even though this Wu Yongqian wished for nothing more than to kill me, but unless Wu Dao said the word, he wouldn't dare kill me in the end. Right in this instant, this thought arose within Duanling Tian's heart. In the next moment, Duanling Tian's gaze went slightly cold. Sword drawing arts. The hand which Duanling Tian held his sword trembled, and his grade 7 spirit sword moved. Whoosh! The sword flashed out like a bolt of lightning, vanishing before Wu Yongqian's eyes. Even though the strength that Duanling Tian exerted was the strength of an entire 24 ancient mammoths inferior to Wu Yongqian, however, the specialty of the sword drawing arts was speed. In the martial skills under the heaven, only speed was undefeatable. So fast. In the distance, Wu Dao and Lu Qiu both watched in concentration at the battle between Duanling Tian and Wu Yongqian, and they were shocked by the speed that Duanling Tian's sword flashed out. The speed that grade 7 spirit sword flashed out was actually not a shred inferior to the grade 6 spirit sword, autumn water, in Wu Yongqian's hands. Duanling Tian's eyes were unable to catch a glimpse of the sword in Wu Yongqian's hand, but it didn't mean that they were unable. Now, relying on their formidable cultivation, their eyes clearly saw the trajectory that the swords in Duanling Tian's and Wu Yongqian's sword flashed through. The grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand caught up from behind, and chased up to the speed of the grade 6 spirit sword in Wu Yongqian's hands. Clang! A burst of iron weapons knocking each other sounded out. It was the grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand, blocking the grade 6 spirit sword in Wu Yongqian's hands in time, at the critical moment. This scene caused Wu Dao's gaze to focus. He was clear in his heart that victory and defeat would be decided in this clash. Duanling Tian and Wu Yongqian. If any one of them would be able to clash with their opponent head-on, then they would obtain victory in one go. The speed of the sword skill isn't bad, but unfortunately, your strength is far inferior to me. Wu Yongqian's hoarse and low voice revealed a trace of a sneer, and origin energy suddenly increased explosively on the autumn water in his hand. The strength of 164 ancient mammoths poured out without holding back in the slightest. He wanted to blast away the grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand and injure Duanling Tian heavily. Is that so? A brilliant smile bloomed on Duanling Tian's handsome face that had starry eyes and sword-shaped eyebrows when he heard Wu Yongqian, and strong confidence was mixed within his smile. This scene caused Wu Dao to be stupefied. This Duanling Tian, where did he get such strong confidence from? Lu Qiu, who stood nearby, concentrated his gaze to look at the scene before him. He wasn't at the scene when Duanling Tian killed Shihao the other time, and it was regrettable to him. Today, he wanted to properly see Duanling Tian's methods of defeating a stronger person with a weaker strength. He was confident towards Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian's eyes squinted when he felt the violent strength that instantly surged out from the autumn water in Wu Yongqian's hands, and a cold light flashed within his eyes. Quake energy. Practically at the instant that he felt the strength increasing explosively on the grade 6 spirit sword, Duanling Tian made his move and executed the formidable ability that was bestowed upon him by the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Techniques WYRM Python form. Instantly, the origin energy on the grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand started to vibrate in a manner that was difficult to notice. The frequency of the vibration grew higher and higher. Clang! The 2 spirit sword that had only just separated had once again clashed together. Just when Wu Dao thought the grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand would be blasted flying by the grade 6 spirit sword in Wu Yongqian's hands. Humph! An oppressed grunt suddenly sounded out. Wu Yongqian had a ghastly pale expression, and the hand that he grasped the sword with seemed to tremble as he gritted his teeth and resisted. In next to no time, his palms split open and fresh blood splattered out. Fresh blood dripped down from the hand Wu Yongqian held his sword with. His hand vibrated along with his sword, but he still gritted his teeth and forcefully held on. Humph! Let's see how long you can hold on for. A wisp of a cold smile appeared on the corners of Duanling Tian's mouth when he saw this. The frequency at which the quake energy vibrated increased to the limit. Ah! Instantly, Wu Yongqian emitted a shrill cry and let go of the grade 6 spirit sword, autumn water, in his hand. But it was still too late, and his carpal bone was shattered by the quake energy. His entire arm completely went limp, weak and feeble as if without bone. The bones within his entire arm was shattered. Clang! The grade 6 spirit sword autumn water was blasted flying by the grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand, and crashed onto the ground. Whoosh! Duanling Tian withdrew his sword and slapped out with his palm that contained raging origin energy. He slapped Wu Yongqian, who was temporarily shaken by the quake energy, to the point of collapse and sent him flying. Bang! Accompanied by a burst of bitter and shrill cries, Wu Yongqian crashed onto the ground. Wu Yongqian, who had a ghastly pale expression, tightly held onto the hand that held the sword earlier, but no matter how he swayed his hand, there was no response from the hand that held the sword anymore. Cripple! No! 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 Wu Yongqian's shrill cries came to an abrupt stop. At this moment, he seemed to be completely numb to the pain. He had a ghastly pale face and his sharp eyes were sprung wide open, unable to believe that all this was real. His right hand, his most important hand, was completely crippled. Die! I want you dead! I want you dead! Wu Yongqian suddenly stood up, and had a gaze that emitted dense hatred as he flashed towards Duanling Tian, wanting to put his life on the line to fight Duanling Tian. His right hand was crippled, but he still had his left hand. Wu Yongqian's left hand was suffused with origin energy, and he struck out towards Duanling Tian, wanting to annihilate Duanling Tian to vent the hatred in his heart. A cold smile appeared on the corners of Duanling Tian's mouth when he saw this scene. This Wu Yongqian wasn't his match when relying on a grade 6 spirit sword. Could it be that Wu Yongqian thought he could be a match for him while empty-handed? Naive. Laughable. Enough. Suddenly, an enraged shout caused Wu Yongqian, who was dashing at Duanling Tian, to stop and freeze on the spot. Even though he still had a face full of unwillingness, but he still didn't dare make any moves. You think you haven't lost enough face? Wu Dao's expression was unsightly as unsightly can be, and his sharp gaze descended onto Wu Yongqian as he spoke in a low voice. Wu Yongqian lowered his head in embarrassment. But at the instant that he lowered his head, his eyes swept towards Duanling Tian, and they were filled with bloodthirsty hatred. Wishing for nothing more than to tear Duanling Tian into pieces, then burn his bones and scatter his ashes. Peak Master, can I leave now? Duanling Tian looked at Wu Dao and indifferently spoke with a calm tone. Humph. Wu Dao was currently enraged, and he coldly snorted, but didn't pay any attention to Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian didn't mind. He nodded to Lu Qiu, and the two of them left the audience hall together, then left Migres Hall. For a time, only Wu Dao and his foster son remained within the spacious audience hall. Wu Dao put away the grade 6 spirit sword, Autumn Water. Then with a raise of his hand, a medicinal pill shot out to flash straight towards Wu Yongqian. Humph. This grade 6 Great Recovery pill ought to be able to heal your right arm. Thank you, foster father. Thank you, foster father. Wu Yongqian received the grade 6 Great Recovery pill with a face full of wild joy, and he hurriedly consumed it. In the Cloud Continent, healing medicinal pill were divided into 9 grades. The lowest grade was undoubtedly the Gold Injury Pill. The Gold Injury Pill was further divided to the Grade 9 Gold Injury Pill, Grade 8 Gold Injury Pill, and Grade 7 Gold Injury Pill. The middle grade healing medicinal pill was the Great Recovery Pill that was further divided to the Grade 6 Great Recovery Pill, Grade 5 Great Recovery Pill, and Grade 4 Great Recovery Pill. As for high-grade healing medicinal pills, the Life Recovery Pill, not to mention the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, even in the entire Darkhan Dynasty, it was still in existence of legend. In the legends, the Life Recovery Pill was divided into 3 grades, the Grade 3 Life Recovery Pill, Grade 2 Life Recovery Pill, and Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill. Supposedly, the Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill was able to resurrect a person and regrow lost flesh and bones. So long as one still has a breath in them, they could be saved with a Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill. Of course, these were only legends. But, in next to no time, the joy on Wu Dongqian's face completely froze, and he swayed his head with a sense of loss, then had an absent-minded expression full of melancholy. It's no use. The Grade 6 Great Recovery Pill is of no use. What? Wu Dao was shocked. He knew that Wu Yongqian had injured his muscle and bones during the battle with Duanling Tian, so he bestowed the Grade 6 Great Recovery Pill to him. So long as the marrow wasn't injured, the Grade 6 Great Recovery Pill was able to help heal split bones. But now, the Grade 6 Great Recovery Pill was useless? Whoosh! Wu Dao's figure swayed and brought about a gust of wind as he instantly appeared before Wu Yongqian. His speed was extremely swift, more than 10 times faster than Wu Yongqian's speed from before. Wu Dao's hand grabbed onto Wu Yongqian's limp arm, and his origin energy fused into the arm to inspect the injuries. In the end, his pupils constricted and had an astonished expression. What method did that Duanling Tian actually use? Actually shattering the bones in your arms to this extent. The marrow within the bones of your arm has been completely destroyed. Marrow destroyed? Unless it was the Life Recovery Pill of legends that was able to resurrect a person and regrow lost flesh and bones. Otherwise, it was utterly impossible to recover such injuries. Moreover, one must consume the Life Recovery Pill within 1 hour of being injured. Otherwise, even a Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill lacks the strength to heal the injuries. Foster father, my hand? My hand is crippled. Wu Yongqian's face was ghastly pale, and his body slightly trembled, as he was unwilling to believe all this was real. This hand of his had an extraordinary meaning to him. Since a young age, he had cultivated all his martial skills with this hand. Now that this hand was crippled, his strength would reduce drastically. If he wanted to cultivate the high-grade profound rank sword skill, nether sword technique, once again with his other hand up to the perfection stage, it would undoubtedly require him spending many years of bitter effort. In this way, it would surely delay the advancement of his cultivation. His life was completely ruined. Thinking up to this point, Wu Yongqian felt as if he had fell into a thaw hole, and his entire body was terrifyingly icy cold. Hatred that come from within his bones arose in his heart. Duan Ling Tian, Duan Ling Tian, we are absolutely irreconcilable. We can't live under the same sky. Wu Yongqian's eyes sprang open like two round saucers and were practically sprung open to the point they nearly popped out. The nearby Wu Dao was stupefied for a moment, and when he recovered from his shock, his eyes revealed a dazzling sheen as he looked at Wu Yongqian and then asked in a low voice, "What happened earlier? Tell me in detail." As for Wu Yongqian's being crippled, he seemed as if not to really mind. Perhaps he had long since not held any expectation towards Wu Yongqian. Wu Yongqian seemed to have realized this, and his heart was like icy. Deep within his heart, the hatred towards Duan Ling Tian grew deeper. But he still obediently replied to Wu Dao. I originally thought that my strength that far surpassed him was sufficient to directly suppress him. But unexpectedly, just when my strength poured out, his origin energy seemed to start to vibrate. Moreover, the frequency it vibrated at grew higher and higher. In the end, the vibration of his origin energy directly shattered my origin energy and caused me to have no successive strength. Not only that, but when his origin energy passed through his grade 7 spirit weapon onto the sword in my hand, my sword and my hand started to vibrate as well. I forcefully held on for an instant, and it caused my palm to split open. As he spoke up to hear, Wu Yongqian's voice was slightly trembling. Later on, I continued to persist. The vibration of his origin energy instantly spread out onto my entire arm. Now it would seem that if it wasn't for me letting go in time, perhaps the bones in my entire body would be shattered by him. Wu Yongqian's heart was filled with regret. If he knew earlier that his opponent had such an ability, he would have surely abandoned his sword when his palm split open. In that way, his palm would have split open at most, and his right arm would surely be fine. But unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this word. Even if he was any more regretful now, it would be of no avail and would make no difference. Duan Ling Tian. In the end, Wu Yongqian transformed all the regret into dense hatred and poured it all onto Duan Ling Tian. His eyes revealed a blood-thirsty sheen that was virtually fiercer than the most venomous snake. Origin energy? Vibrate? Wu Dao slightly pondered for a moment after he heard Wu Yongqian's description. That Duan Ling Tian relied on this to defeat a stronger opponent with a weaker strength? This seems to not be a martial skill and not be force. Could it be that it's a method that's included within the cultivation method he cultivated? Or perhaps it's a method of cultivating the origin energy that's broken away from martial skills. Looks like I have to find an opportunity to have a private chat with him. As he finished speaking, Wu Dao came to a decision in his heart, and traces of a greedy sheen appeared in his eyes. If he was able to master this ability, he dared say that no one below the void initiation stage would be a match for him. Outside in the primeval forest, atop the calm sky, two incomparably swift figures flashed out from within the primeval forest and hung high in the air. The owners of these two figures was a young girl and an old woman. The old woman wore green clothes and respectfully followed behind the young girl. She had a humble expression, as if she was a lowly servant. The young girl wore yellow clothes with a beautiful and cute appearance. Her eyes slightly revolved as they flickered with a cheeky sheen. Hiss hiss, suddenly, two small heads stuck out from beneath the young girl's sleeve. It was two little pythons that ceaselessly flicked their tongues. Among the two little pythons, One was black and the other white. Their gold and silver eyes now gazed towards a faraway directions, and within their gazes was traces of reluctance of parting. Little black, little white. You too miss big brother Ling Tian again. The yellow-clothed young girl stroked the small heads of the two little pythons, then mischievously smiled. The two dimples on her face were extremely cute. Hiss hiss, the two little pythons nodded like humans. We're leaving. I'll bring the two of you to look for Big Brother Ling Tian in the future, okay? When you two meet Big Brother Ling Tian next, you two must give him a huge surprise. The yellow-clothed young girl revealed a cunning smile on her face. Hiss hiss, the two little pythons were joyful when they heard the yellow-clothed young girl. Miss, it's time for us to go. The green-clothed old woman that floated behind the yellow-clothed young girl bowed as she spoke to the yellow-clothed young girl. Okay, Qing Nu, let's go. The yellow-clothed young girl nodded. Swoosh. Instantly, the green-clothed old woman raised her hand. An extremely strong, shapeless force enveloped her and the yellow-clothed young girl. Suddenly, the air shook. In the next moment, the two figures transformed into flowing lights that couldn't be caught with the eyes and disappeared without a trace. After Duan Ling Tian and Lucio left Migres Hall together, they followed along the earlier route to return. Duan Ling Tian, you? On the way, Lucio was slightly hesitant. He wanted to say something but seemed to have some misgiving. Elder Lucio, you've saved my life once and gave me the grace of rebirth. If you have something to say, then speak straightforwardly. Duan Ling Tian lightly smiled. His smile was like spring breeze brushing on one's face. Lucio nodded, then continued to say, although I don't know what methods you relied on to defeat a stronger opponent with a weaker strength, and killed Shi Hao and even defeated the Peak Master's foster son, Wu Yongqian. However, just like the saying, a man's wealth is his own ruin by causing greed in others. Today, you've revealed such a terrifying ability before the Peak Master. I'm afraid. Afraid the Peak Master would covet the ability that I possess, right? Duan Ling Tian continued on from what Lucio wanted to say, and the corners of his mouth curled into an inexplicable smile. Lucio nodded with a serious expression. Thank you for your concern, Elder Lucio, but I didn't have any other choice at the time and could only do that. Duan Ling Tian's eyes narrowed into a line as he lightly smiled. Indeed, he had no other choice. If he didn't use the quake energy, it would be impossible for him to be a match for Wu Yongqian. Once he lost at the hands of Wu Yongqian, according to the agreement between him and Wu Dao, he must become Wu Dao's personal disciple. For the sake of making Wu Dao dispel this thought, he naturally had to go all out and defeat Wu Yongqian. Only then would he be able to get out the predicament. I really don't understand. Why didn't you comply with the Peak Master's request? If you became the disciple of the Peak Master, then you would be able to obtain his protection to a certain extent. At least, Zhao Lin would be fearful because of this and wouldn't act rashly. Lucio shook his head, as he really didn't understand Duan Ling Tian's decision. As far as he was concerned, if Duan Ling Tian took Wu Dao as his master, Duan Ling Tian would gain everything but lose nothing. Duan Ling Tian only smiled when he heard Lucio, but didn't say anything further. He had his own way of thinking. Moreover, not to mention he had inherited the lifetime memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, and he utterly had no reason to acknowledge someone weaker than the Rebirth Martial Emperor as his master. Just the reason that Wu Dao wanted to take him as a disciple was something anyone with a discerning gaze would be able to see through. Wu Dao didn't sincerely want to take him as a personal disciple, and instead wanted to use Duan Ling Tian to satisfy his own vanity. Duan Ling Tian believed that as long as he was willing, even the sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect would probably fight to take him as a personal disciple. The natural talent he revealed had already transcended above the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. In the history of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there hadn't been an existence that had a cultivation like him at his age. It's you. Suddenly, an explosive voice that was like a thunderclap sounded out near Duan Ling Tian, causing him to be as if jolted awake from a dream. Duan Ling Tian looked over, and he saw that there was one person following along the road to walk up Dubhe Peak now. This was a young man who wore the inner court disciples' attire of the Seven-Star Sword sect and was around the age of 25 or 26. With just a glance, Duanling Tian felt this person to be slightly familiar. This inner court disciple had eyes that seemed to erupt with flames as he looked at Duanling Tian, as he wished for nothing more than to directly charge up to Duanling Tian and fight Duanling Tian to the death. Fan Jian? Lu Qiu, who was beside Duanling Tian, obviously recognized this inner court disciple. Meanwhile, this inner court disciple noticed Lu Qiu and took a deep breath, then slightly respectfully nodded to Lu Qiu. Elder Lu Qiu. What? You know Duanling Tian? Lu Qiu looked at Fan Jiao and was slightly surprised as he asked. Earlier, he clearly saw the gaze Fan Jian looked at Duanling Tian with. It was a gaze filled with hatred and rage. He couldn't help but be curious. According to his knowledge, Fan Jian had left the Seven-Star Sword sect half a year ago to go far away. And looking at Fan Jian's appearance that was fatigued from a journey, Fan Jian had obviously only just returned. Whereas Duanling Tian had entered the Seven-Star Sword sect half a year ago and was someone from a small kingdom that was subordinate to the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Fan Jian to know Duanling Tian. Far more than that. Fan Jian looked at Duanling Tian. His gaze emitted a fierce light and his face revealed resentment. I know you. Duanling Tian frowned and was slightly speechless. There was something wrong in the head of this inner court disciple, right? Although he felt the inner court disciple was familiar. But he remembered that during the 6 months he'd arrived at the Seven-Star Sword sect, he seemed to have entirely not have come into contact with any inner court disciple. Look like you've really forgotten. Then I'll remind you properly. Half a year ago, Black Bamboo City, restaurant. Fan Jian gnashed his teeth. This fellow asked his follower to throw him out of the restaurant, causing him to lose all face. Now, this fellow actually completely forgot him. Fan Jian originally thought that he'd thrown that incident to the back of his mind. And only until he met the person once again did he realize that the displeasure in his heart hadn't dispersed yet. Half a year ago, Black Bamboo City, restaurant? Before long, Duanling Tian's eyes flickered, and he completely recalled it. You are that inner court disciple that was together with Hua Xian and Yuan Wu, and desired to forcefully buy the infant mouse in my possession? Looks like you finally recalled it. Fan Jian sneered when he saw Duanling Tian recognize him. But he was slightly puzzled in his heart. This young man had actually become an outer court disciple now. Looks like the guesses of he, Hua Xian, and Yuan Wu at that time weren't wrong. This young man appeared in the Black Bamboo City that day, and as expected was intending to enter the Seven-Star Sword sect. Moreover, this young man seems to know of Hua Xian and Yuan Wu. Could it be that Hua Xian and Yuan Wu have already taught him a lesson? Hua Xian? Yuan Wu? The corners of the nearby Lu Qiu's mouth twitched when he heard Duanling Tian. He vaguely realized something. He still remembered that half a year ago, not long after Duanling Tian entered the Seven-Star Sword sect, conflict had arisen between Duanling Tian, Hua Xian, and Yuan Wu, and they even ascended the life and death arena. Hua Xian and Yuan Wu were killed by Duanling Tian in a single move atop the Migres Peak's life and death arena. And it was precisely after that battle that Duanling Tian became a famous person within Migres Peak. At that time, he felt it to be slightly strange, as Duanling Tian had only just entered the Seven-Star Sword sect. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Duanling Tian to have such a huge conflict with Hua Xian and Yuan Wu that was actually to the extent they had to ascend the life and death arena. Now, when he heard what Duanling Tian said, he seemed to have understood something. So it turned out the Hua Xian and Yuan Wu actually wanted to forcefully buy something of Duanling Tian's. Perhaps it was precisely because of this that they came into conflict. At that time, Fan Jian came into conflict with Duanling Tian together with Hua Xian and Yuan Wu. Lu Qiu's heart jerked as a bad premonition arose within his heart. Yes, I remember now. Duanling Tian nodded indifferently. He looked at Fan Jian with a calm gaze and a carefree expression. A slight rage arose on Fan Jian's face when he saw Duanling Tian, seeming to be indifferent, and said in a low voice, You're called Duanling Tian, right? Since you know that the two outer court disciples that were by my side that day are Hua Xian and Yuan Wu, I presume they have already taught you a lesson before. But those are two independent things. Them teaching you a lesson was them getting even with you. But you still haven't repaid what you owe me, Fanjian. Fanjian looked at Duan Ling Tian, and his gaze gradually became icy cold. Yes, I've indeed been taught a lesson by them. Duan Ling Tian nodded in all seriousness and deeply glanced at Fanjian, as he secretly said, "But for the sake of teaching me a lesson, they lost their lives as well." Very good. Fanjian's face revealed a gloomy smile. That day in Black Bamboo City, you had a nascent soul stage martial artist by your side to protect you, but now, you're instead in the 7-star sword sect. No one can protect you. So what? Duan Ling Tian started laughing brilliantly. Now, he was able to perceive that this Fanjian had probably only just returned to the 7-star sword sect. He remembered that either Hua Xian or Yuan Wu had said that Fanjian seemed to have left the 7-star sword sect and went far away. Now it would seem that Fanjian had probably just returned. So what? Fanjian's face sank when he saw the smile on Duan Ling Tian's face, and cold lights flickered within his eyes. Duan Ling Tian, you made me lose face in public that day. Today, I'll give you a chance. You crawl over from under my crotch, and the matter between the two of us will be written off. The smile on Duan Ling Tian's face completely froze when he heard Fanjian. Crotch? Instantly, raging flames jumped about deep within Duan Ling Tian's eyes, as if capable of setting everything ablaze. Duan Ling Tian was enraged. This Fanjian really thought he was afraid of him? Lu Qiu's expression suddenly went gloomy, and he looked at Fanjian as he shouted out, "Fanjian, apologize to Duan Ling Tian right now." Lu Qiu felt Duan Ling Tian's rage. Fanjian was shocked by Lu Qiu's sudden shout and frowned in slight displeasure. Even though he was from Migres Peak and had quite a good relationship with Lu Qiu, but Lu Qiu acting like this was undoubtedly asking him to lose face in public. Elder Lu Qiu. Fanjian's face sank and wanted to say something, but he hadn't finished speaking when his face froze, and his eyes revealed traces of disbelief and terror. Because, just at this moment, he received a message from Lu Qiu. Fanjian, half a year ago when Duan Ling Tian had just entered the 7-star sword sect, he killed Hua Xian and Yuan Wu in the life and death arena. Later on, he killed another 6th-level origin core stage outer court disciple. A few days ago, during the outer court martial competition, Duan Ling Tian killed the number 1 disciple in the outer court Shi Hao. Just earlier, my Migres Peak's master's foster son, Wu Yongqian, an existence at the 9th level of the origin core stage, lost at his hands in merely a single move. If you don't want to bring trouble to yourself and end up like how Hua Xian and Yuan Wu ended up, then apologize right now. Lu Qiu's voice was like a thunderclap, blasting on Fanjian to cause him to feel a burst of astonishment. This Duan Ling Tian had only entered the 7-star sword sect for half a year and had done so many shocking deeds? Moreover, senior brother Wu Yongqian wasn't a match for him? Forget Hua Xian, Yuan Wu, and Shi Hao, they were only outer court disciples, and he didn't take them to heart. But Wu Yongqian was an inner court senior brother that even he felt himself to be inferior to. Now, even Wu Yongqian had lose at Duan Ling Tian's hand. He could imagine the result of him clashing with Duan Ling Tian. Even though he was unwilling to believe it, but Fanjian was clear in his heart that it was impossible that Elder Lu Qiu would deceive him. Humph! Duan Ling Tian's gaze went slightly cold when he saw Lu Qiu call out to Fanjian. Then Fanjian's throat seemed to be as if choked by someone and was unable to say another word. He'd already guessed that it was surely Elder Lu Qiu who had condensed his origin energy into sound and warned Fanjian. Duan Ling Tian, I'm sorry. Fanjian's face started to slightly tremble and was briefly distorted slightly. In the end, as if he'd made a great resolution, he gritted his teeth and apologized to Duan Ling Tian. He had a face full of unwillingness that was without a shred of sincerity. Today, out of respect for Elder Lu Qiu, I can let our formed grievance be melted away like ice. But the common saying is correct, it's difficult to gather up spilled water. Duan Ling Tian looked at Fanjian, and his gaze became slightly ice-cold. "There are some words that once spoken, you must pay the price for it." At practically the instant that Duanling Tian finished speaking, and Lucio's and Fanjian's face changed, Duanling Tian moved. Whoosh! The grade 7 spirit sword that appeared out of thin air on Duanling Tian's hand seemed to transform into a bolt of lightning that whistled as it flashed by. At practically the exact same instant, "Ah!" Fanjian emitted a shrill cry, and the pinky on his right hand was severed by Duanling Tian. Fresh blood splattered out as the severed finger dropped onto the ground. This was the price that Duanling Tian wanted Fanjian to pay. Fanjian took a deep breath and his face flushed red. Origin energy jumped about at the spot his pinky was cut off to temporarily stop the bleeding. Right when Fanjian's gaze descended onto the severed finger on the ground and wanted to pick it up later to get an alchemist to connect it for him. Whoosh! As if he perceived Fanjian's intentions, the grade 7 spirit sword in Duanling Tian's hand trembled then flashed out, flicking up the severed finger then sweeping it out of Dubhe Peak to descend the bottomless abyss and disappear. Now, even if Fanjian ran down Dubhe Peak and found his severed finger, it would be impossible to connect it back. Duanling Tian. This scene caused Fanjian's eyes to transform into a crimson-red color as he stared fixedly at Duanling Tian. At this moment, Fanjian seemed as if he'd transformed into a fierce beast that had opened its bloody mouth, wanting to swallow Duanling Tian. His chest was filled with restless flames of rage that would gush out at any moment. "The grievances between the two of us are written off right now." Duanling Tian ignored the enraged Fanjian as he spoke with a calm voice. He didn't wait to see if Fanjian agreed as he casually put away the spirit sword in his hand and started to walk down Dubhe Peak. Meanwhile, some of the inner court disciples that passed by and spectated were all dumbstruck as they watched Duanling Tian leave. Who the heck was this outer court disciple? Actually so bold and powerful. Severing the pinky of an inner court disciple and sweeping it down the bottomless abyss, entirely not allow him a chance to reconnect his pinky. Fanjian, good luck? Lucio glanced deeply at Fanjian, who had a face full of rage, and shook his head inside. The saying "troubled are caused by the mouth" is precisely talking about the current Fanjian. He was able to perceive that even when Duanling Tian recognized Fanjian earlier, his mood still remained stable and stable, and there was no signs of getting enraged. In other words, at that time, Duanling Tian didn't intend on doing anything to Fanjian. Until Fanjian wanted Duanling Tian to crawl under his crotch did Duanling Tian emit a killing intent that was so dense it even caused him to feel afraid. He knew that if it wasn't for him saving Duanling Tian's life on the chain bridge today, then Duanling Tian would absolutely not easily let off Fanjian earlier just for the sake of him. In Cloud Continent, the strong were respected. Every martial artist that had the heart of an expert would have their own pride. Duanling Tian was a rare genius martial artist of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and Duanling Tian's pride undoubtedly surpassed ordinary martial artists. If a person that trampled on his pride could survive, it could already be considered as getting lucky. Fanjian's eyes emitted dense coldness as he gazed at Duanling Tian's figure that disappeared in the distance. Want him to write off all the grievances between him and Duanling Tian like this? No. He was unwilling. But when he thought of the strength that Duanling Tian possessed now, a trace of reason arose in his heart. Finally, his reason took the advantage and suppressed his belly full of rage. When Fanjian returned to his sense and saw the crowd of inner court disciples that stood nearby to stare at him, his face sank and shouted in a low voice, "What are you all looking at?" The crowd of inner court disciples scattered when they saw Fanjian getting angry from embarrassment. When they arrived nearby the chain bridge that led to Migres Peak, Duanling Tian lightly smiled as he said to Lucio, "Elder Lucio, I have other things to take care of, so I won't be following you back." "Okay, go ahead." Lucio nodded and walked towards the chain bridge alone. Duanling Tian looked around at his surroundings, then took a circle around the various mountain paths where streams of people surged on Dubhe Peak. After half an hour, once he was sure that no one was following him, only then did he walk down Dubhe Peak. Before long, Duanling Tian arrived nearby the entrance of the Seven-Star Sword Sect. The Seven-Star Sword sect had a place that specialized in raising horses, and the Fergana horse that Duanling Tian rode over here half a year ago was left here. I've come to take my horse. Duanling Tian walked in the stable, then lightly smiled to one of the outer court disciple that was raising the horses. Number plate. The outer court disciple spoke as he raised his head to look at Duanling Tian. With a glance, the outer court disciple was stunned on the spot and stared blankly at Duanling Tian. Then he rubbed his eyes before asking slightly uncertainly, Your senior brother Duanling Tian? Duanling Tian withdrew a number plate from his spatial ring and passed it to the outer court disciple. Then he nodded. You know me? Of course. The outer court disciple hurriedly nodded and had an excited expression. Senior brother Duanling Tian, I want to see the outer court martial competition that day as well. You're too formidable. Even senior brother Sure How wasn't a match for you. Duanling Tian smiled. Senior brother Duanling Tian, is the horse within the stable that corresponds to this number plate yours? Suddenly, the outer court disciple glanced at the number plate Duanling Tian passed to him and asked respectfully. Yes. Duanling Tian nodded. Hee. Senior brother Duanling Tian, in the future, I'll surely properly give more good food to your horse. I guarantee to make it run as if on wings. The outer court disciple laughed slyly as he said to Duanling Tian. Then I'll thank you in advance. Duanling Tian lightly smiled. What's your name? The outer court disciple instantly had an excited expression on his face when he heard Duanling Tian ask his name. Senior brother Duanling Tian. I'm called Mou, the Mo of ink and the U of corn. I've remembered it, Mou. Duanling Tian nodded. Come, take me to get my horse. Yes. Mou hurriedly brought Duanling Tian to walk inwards when he heard this. Mou, did you willingly come to the stables to take care of horses? Duanling Tian looked at the outer court disciple who had a similar age to him and asked curiously. Yes. Mou nodded, then laughed slyly. The conditions in my family are only ordinary, and my current strength isn't strong, so I don't dare go deep into the primeval forest. So, I applied to come here and take care of these horses, as in this way I'm able to earn a salary. Duanling Tian nodded. In next to no time, Duanling Tian saw his Fergana horse. Compared to half a year ago, the Fergana horse had become much fatter. Now that he thought about it, this past half year, the Fergana horse was raised here like raising a pig. It would be weird if it didn't gain weight. Duanling Tian leapt onto the Fergana horse and smiled to Mou. Then I'll be leaving first. Senior brother Duanling Tian, take care. Under Mou's respectful gaze, Duanling Tian galloped his horse to leave the stable, then left the Seven-Star Sword sect to head towards Black Bamboo City. I wonder when I'll be able to possess half the strength of senior brother Duanling Tian. Mou's eyes was filled with anticipation and staunchness. After half a year, Duanling Tian once again arrived at Black Bamboo City. In next to no time, he'd arrived at the courtyard house he bought that day. Young master. As before, Xiong Quan was humble and respectful when he saw Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian nodded, then slowly said, Xiong Quan, I came to look for you this time, mainly to refine a grade 7 spirit cleansing pill for you to consume. After 3 months, your cultivation will be able to completely recover. Completely recover my cultivation? Xiong Quan had an excited expression when he heard Duanling Tian, and his fierce eyes now had traces of mist appear on them. Thank you, young master. Thank you, young master. Xiong Quan excitedly thanked Duanling Tian. He could finally recover his cultivation when he was at his prime, the 6th level of the void prying stage. Moreover, although during these few years, his cultivation was no longer like before, but he didn't dare slack on his cultivation. He was confident that once his cultivation recovered to the 6th level of the void prying stage, it wouldn't be long before he would be able to smoothly break through to the 7th level of the void prying stage. After a short while, Xiong Quan calmed his mood and realized he'd left Duanling Tian out in the cold, and an apologetic expression appeared on his face. Young master, I'm sorry, I was too excited. I can understand. Duanling Tian nodded and didn't mind. Young master, you're able to refine a grade 7 spirit cleansing pill now. Then doesn't that mean that you've already broke through too? Finally, Xiong Quan, who had come back to his senses, realized an important question. According to his knowledge, only an alchemist at the 7th level of the origin core stage was able to condense a grade 7 pill fire and refine grade 7 medicinal pills. Right, I've broken through to the 7th level of the origin core stage. Duanling Tian didn't conceal it and nodded. Congratulations, young master. At the same time that Xiong Quan congratulated Duanling Tian, raging waves arose within his heart. It had only been half a year, and the young master had broken through to the 7th level of the origin core stage. The young master seems to have not turned 21 yet, right? A martial artist at the 7th level of the origin core stage, and not yet 21 years old. Only thinking about it caused Xiong Quan's scalp to go slightly numb. All right, stand on guard for me, and don't let anyone disturb me. I'll be refining the grade 7 spirit cleansing pill for you in the room. Duanling Tian said to Xiong Quan, then walked into his old room. The room was extremely clean, as Xiong Quan had obviously gotten someone to clean it regularly. Whoosh! Duanling Tian withdrew the cauldron, but didn't directly start to refine the medicinal pill. What he wanted to refine now was a grade 7 spirit cleansing pill, and this grade 8 spirit cauldron wasn't sufficient anymore. The grade 7 pill fire was sufficient to directly destroy a grade 8 spirit cauldron. So, what he needed to do now was to refine a grade 7 spirit cauldron. This grade 8 spirit cauldron was given to him by Li Fei's grandfather all those years ago, and it was a cauldron refined by the master of Li Fei's grandfather with superior weapons refining materials. Duanling Tian only needed to add on some materials, and he would be able to increase the grade of the cauldron to a grade 7 spirit weapon. This was something Duanling Tian had planned since long ago. So much as when he left the Crimson Sky Kingdom, the materials to refine the grade 7 spirit cauldron was included within the materials he asked the various powers to gather. So, what he needed to do now was to increase the grade of the cauldron. Once the grade of the cauldron was increased to a grade 7 spirit weapon, he would be able to refine the grade 7 spirit cleansing pill. After he withdrew the material, Duanling Tian's gaze focused. Hiss! As he flipped his palm, a strand of flame was lit ablaze at the center of his palm. The flame rose up suddenly as it raged and spread out. This flame assumed a gold color, and it was dazzling and resplendent. It was precisely a grade 7 weapon flame. Followed by the grade 7 weapon flame leaping up, the pile of weapons refining materials that Duanling Tian withdrew had quickly been melted and transformed into pools of liquid that combined together under the control of Duanling Tian in the end. In next to no time, Duanling Tian melted the grade 8 spirit cauldron, and another pool of liquid appeared. In the end, the two pools of liquids converged together and gradually fused together. Under the fueling of the grade 7 weapon flame in Duanling Tian's hand, the liquids gradually fused into one, not differentiating between each other any longer. The entire process spent more than an hour. The grade 7 weapon flame raged, and under Duanling Tian's control, that liquid that completely fused together gradually condensed into form, transforming into a rough outline of a cauldron. The shape of the cauldron gradually became clearer to finally transform into an exquisite cauldron. Surrounding the cauldron were 9 domineering lifelike divine dragons. I'll call you 9 Dragons Cauldron in the future. A wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Duanling Tian's mouth as he looked at the cauldron before him, and as the grade 7 weapon flame in his hand gradually extinguished, the 9 Dragons Cauldron slowly descended into his hand. This was the first time Duanling Tian refined a weapon after become a grade 7 weapons craftsman. He who possessed the lifetime worth of weapons refining experience of the Rebirth Martial Emperor was skillful and dexterous when refining this cauldron, and he didn't encounter any obstructions. Everything was that natural. Since he had the grade 7 spirit cauldron, 9 Dragons Cauldron, Duanling Tian was able to start refining the grade 7 spirit cleansing pill. The grade 7 spirit cleansing pill was sufficient to completely remove the remaining origin-sealing parasite in Xiong Quan's body and allow Xiong Quan to recover his strength at his prime. Once Xiong Quan recovered, he would become an extremely huge assistance to Duanling Tian. And it was precisely because of this that not long after he broke through to the 7th level of the Origin Core stage and became a Grade 7 alchemist, he urgently hurriedly back to Black Bamboo City just to help Xiong Quan remove the remaining poison from the Origin Sealing parasite. The materials required for the Grade 7 Spirit Cleansing Pill were also one of the material he had asked to various powers of the Crimson Sky Kingdom to collect during that time. Now he could directly refine it. Hiss. As Duan Ling Tian flipped his hand, a strand of gold flamed was once again condensed in his hand. This strand of gold flame was different from the Grade 7 weapon flame from before, as it was completed condensed together with a deep color. Grade 7 Pill Fire. Duan Ling Tian withdrew a pile of medicinal material and combined with the 9 Dragons Cauldron and his Grade 7 Pill Fire. He spent an entire 2 house to refine the Grade 7 Spirit Cleansing Pill. 3 Grade 7 Spirit Cleansing Pills. Duan Ling Tian walked out of the room and passed the 3 Grade 7 Spirit Cleansing Pills to Xiong Quan and instructed at the same time. Xiong Quan, your cultivation will be able to recover to your prime after 3 months. At that time, I intend to make a trip to the Solitary Summit. Solitary Summit, Shangguan Yin. It was precisely the person the Boundless Sect's young sect leader asked Duan Ling Tian to go look for. There was a voice transmission jade slip in Duan Ling Tian's possession, and it was something the Boundless Sect's young sect leader entrusted Duan Ling Tian to pass to Shangguan Yin. Yes, Xiong Quan replied respectfully, and a trace of gratitude appeared in his eyes. Xiong Quan was once a member of the Boundless Sect, and Duan Ling Tian able to remember what the young sect leader of the Boundless Sect entrusted to him even after so long, caused Xiong Quan to feel heartfelt gratitude. You recover properly, I'll come look for you in 3 months. Duan Ling Tian said to Xiong Quan, then left the courtyard house and left Black Bamboo City. He returned to the 7-star sword sect and returned to Migres Peak. After half an hour of vigilantly taking a few circled on the mountain paths on Migres Peak that surged with streams of people and confirmed that it was impossible for someone to follow him, Duan Ling Tian turned into a remote mountain path and walked towards the peak of Migres Peak. Today, the madness of Zhao Lin made Duan Ling Tian perceive danger. He had no choice but to be extremely careful. Once Zhao Lin found an opportunity, he would be eternally doomed. After returning to the stalactite cave, Duan Ling Tian calmed his heart and cultivated as he awaited the arrival of the inner court disciple test. Besides cultivating, during this month, Duan Ling Tian had also made a trip to the primeval forest. During the process of killing fierce beasts, he had tested the scope of effect of the quake energy he controlled now. He still remembered that when he was at the 4th level of the Origin Core stage, the scope of effect of the quake energy was within the strength of 10 ancient mammoths. When he was at the 5th level of the Origin Core stage, the scope of effect of the quake energy was within the strength of 20 ancient mammoths. When he was at the 6th level of the Origin Core stage, the scope of effect of the quake energy was within the strength of 30 ancient mammoths. Now that his cultivation had stepped into the 7th level of the Origin Core stage, the scope of effect of the quake energy had advanced in one go to be within the strength of 50 ancient mammoths. In other words, so long as the strength of his opponent didn't exceed the strength of 50 ancient mammoths from him, his quake energy would be able to affect his opponent. Once my cultivation breaks through to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage, the 3rd form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the WYRM Python form would attain perfection. At that time, the quake energy would advance to the limit. I wonder to what extent the quake energy advanced to would at that time. Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath, his eyes flickered with a bright light, and he was filled with anticipation. A month's time passed by quickly, and the day of the inner court disciple test arrived at the appointed time. Duan Ling Tian left the stalactite cave, then left the peak of Migres Peak to arrive nearby the trade hall. Right when Duan Ling Tian wanted to step onto the chain bridge. Duan Ling Tian. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian heard a slightly familiar voice sound out from behind him, but for a moment he was unable to recall who the owner of the voice was. He turned around, and he saw a young man walked over towards him in large strides. The young man squeezed out a trace of a smile on his face. He Dong. Duan Ling Tian replied with a smile. The person that arrived wasn't anyone else, but precisely the 7th level origin core stage disciple of Migres Peak, Hidong. In next to no time, relying on his sharp spiritual force and the lifetime worth of experiences of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, Duanling Tian was able to feel that there seemed to be an extra trace of a slight change on Hidong, and he had a guess in his heart. Duanling Tian, you're intending to participate in the inner court disciple test, right? Hidong came to stand before Duanling Tian and asked with a light smile. He could be arrogant before other Migres Peak disciples, but before Duanling Tian, he was unable to become arrogant in the slightest. In terms of natural talent and strength, he was unable to compare to the young man before him that was slightly over 20. Duanling Tian lightly smiled as he nodded. I heard you broke through to the 8th level of the origin core stage in one go after consuming the profound origin fruit. Congratulations. Hidong smiled as he congratulated. Duanling Tian nodded. He wasn't surprised in the slightest that Hidong was able to know his current cultivation. After all, many people saw him exert a strength comparable to the 8th level of the origin core stage that day, and now, perhaps it had already spread throughout Migres Peak. Same to you. Duanling Tian lightly smiled and congratulated Hidong as well. Same to me? Hidong was startled and wasn't able to recover from his shock for some time. Duanling Tian deeply glanced at Hidong, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Didn't you break through to the 8th level of the origin core stage as well? You ought to intend to participate in the inner court test now, right? You. How did you know? Hidong was stunned. How did this Duanling Tian discern this? After all, he'd only broken through a few days ago, and after he broke through, he didn't mention the matter of him breaking through to anyone. So how did he reveal his cultivation that was at the 8th level of the origin core stage before anyone? Now, he felt extremely astonished when Duanling Tian laid bare his secret with a single remark. Duanling Tian smiled mysteriously. Duanling Tian, I'm more and more unable to see through you now. Hidong sighed. No matter was it when he saw Duanling Tian kill the number 1 disciple in the outer court, sure how, with his own 2 eyes during that day, or this time when Duanling Tian was able to see through his cultivation with a single glance. They all allowed him to realize the mysteriousness of Duanling Tian. There seemed to be many secrets concealed within this Duanling Tian. Since the both of us are going to participate in the inner court disciple test, how about we go together? Hidong looked at Duanling Tian and invited. I don't mind. Duanling Tian shrugged and showed indifference. Subsequently, Duanling Tian and Hidong stepped onto the chain bridge together, and after they arrived at Dubhe Peak, they walked down the mountain towards the test platform. Duanling Tian had come to this test platform 7 months ago. At that time, he had just arrived at the 7-star sword sect and passed the outer court disciple test there to become a member of the 7-star sword sect. When Duanling Tian and Hidong arrived at the test platform, there were already many people waiting here. Duanling Tian. A familiar voice sounded near his ears, and glanced over to see a woman that stood alone at a side walking over slowly. The woman's appearance was delicate and pretty, her eyes incomparably bright, and a trace of a light smile appeared on her face. Senior Sister Zhuqing. Duanling Tian lightly smiled as he greeted the delicate and pretty woman. The delicate and pretty woman was precisely Li Fei's senior sister, Zhuqing. Duanling Tian, I heard you broke through to the 8th level of the origin core stage 1 month ago. Looks like the medicinal strength of the profound origin fruit was really completely brought out by you. Obviously, Zhuqing had heard of Duanling Tian's breakthrough. I was just lucky. Duanling Tian shook his head and said modestly. There's nothing to be lucky about. Zhuqing shook her head then said, after hearing that you broke through to the 8th level of the origin core stage, Junior Sister started cultivating even more painstakingly. I'm afraid it won't be long before she'll be able to smoothly break through to the 6th level of the origin core stage. When she mentioned Li Fei, Zhuqing's eyes emitted traces of doting. She had heartfelt love towards that junior sister with extraordinary natural talent of hers. Duanling Tian's brows knit, and a bitter smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. That little girl is always so eager to do well in everything. Zhuqing, you've come to participate in the inner court disciple test as well? Could it be that you've broken through as well? Hidong looked at Zhuqing with a surprised expression. Zhuqing shook her head. Who said I had to break through to participate in the inner court disciple test? It's indeed difficult for a 7th level origin core stage martial artist to pass the inner court disciple test, but doesn't mean that there is no chance. As she finished speaking, Zhuqing had a confident expression. What's more, you're able to come. So why aren't I able to come? Zhuqing looked at Hidong, and her words were incomparably dominant.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.